Many clicking past ain't feeling his hymn. Waiting for the moment, blow up like a piston. Haters gonna hate, but persistence gonna glisten. Hold tight, 20 turn to 100 someday. Laugh in their face, shouting, who wants some pay?
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What up, what up, what up, what up? What up, Twitch? What up, Michael, who was here before the title card to poke me and make sure that I was awake and alive? What up, Cosmic? What up, Broral? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up, tiny people in my chatterino? It's your boy. It's your boy. Stampy is here. And Stampy is Stampy's fine with the snacks, it turns out. Stampy is apparently has an issue with performing and showing himself on stream. So again, I'm gonna be doing some stuff tomorrow. One of the things is I'll try to find something that'll coax him back into the Stampy cam. Oh, I can get rid of this too. All right. So everyone, thanks to everyone who played the mushroom game. It was fun. It was appreciated. It was lucrative. You are all very, very greatly appreciated. You can now, if you choose to do so, remove it from your phones and other devices. Like James is on his new thing, you know, etc., etc. So clear some space on your devices. We've got a bunch of stuff to get to, and so I'm going to shut up and we're going to start watching some video. Up first, we talked about this briefly during the morning show about Disney's video. This person named X Clips says Disney should be ashamed.
Honestly, Star Wars should be
Why so quiet? Oh, that's why. So now we'll get to see the actual video that they posted.
Honestly, Star Wars should be absolutely ashamed of this. You know, I'm not a Luddite. I consider myself open to technological innovation, but what's been happening with AI in the creative space is clearly, well, dog shit. And Lucasfilm's
I don't like it, ergo dog shit.
VP of Creative Innovation just went on a TED stage and previewed what he calls a new era of technology, showing in 2 minutes.
Now, don't get me wrong. I find this I find this fairly like intellectually lazy. I think they could have done better. I think they could have done more. I'm not offended by the idea. We covered that. Worth 1000 had thousands of exactly this kind of thing where people, you know, like if I need to, I'll do it. And just because I like showing it off is Tarantula Bear, right? Tarantula Bear being the most terrifying thing I could possibly think of. If you can imagine a bear like a grizzly with a tarantula head just running at you. And how, like, the question is, would you shit yourself and then die, or die and then shit yourself? But, you know, kind of mid.
AI generated video, and
this one is cool.
This is supposed to be a nature documentary in the Star Wars universe. I mean,
this one's a bit silly.
I mean, look at it yourself. It's clearly just taking the input data, slightly mixing it up, and giving us garbage. I just find it so ironic that after a show like Andor, a pinnacle of creativity for Lucasfilm, one of the first things we're hearing from this company is about
a little monkey spider.
about this garbage AI project. They should be beyond embarrassed about this. Just sucks, especially because when you go to the root of Star Wars, it's an extremely creative person, George Lucas, making a film a clear passion project using whatever tools he had.
This is super cool. The manatee octopus, I like this a lot. This is what I'm talking about. This is something like, it's interesting. It has a basis in stuff, right? Again, I can easily tell manatee, I can easily tell octopus. This is the kind of stuff that I would like to see
Available, whether it was a piece of a machine, initially something else, a costume from an existing movie. There's just so much love and passion, and this is not that. These are
again, people gloss over everything negative about Star Wars in the fact that, like, you know, there's a bunch. But if you enjoy it, then enjoy it, right? Like, I'm not hating. I enjoy Star Wars. I've seen everything. Yeah, no, I've seen everything. I haven't seen all of everything. But I've seen at least some of everything, and I've seen all the movies. I haven't seen the current season of Andor because the wife and I are going to watch that after we're done with Twin Peaks. I've never seen Twin Peaks, and we're watching Twin Peaks. So everything is on hold until that. But at its core, it was a movie for children about space wizards. What I like about Andor and Rogue One is the medium aged with me, right? I want more depth. I want more realism. I want to understand the underside of yeah, we're gonna let me talk about that in a second, Michael. I want that, like, I want to understand what a rebellion really means, right? Like, I think it was in the second of the sequels wherein they they talked about the rebellion from the point of view of, like, trying to inspire hope. And I dig it. It's great. I enjoyed the only thing that I didn't like about the first of the prequels was too much Jar Jar Binks, too much, of whatever that is, right? But, I understand that sometimes that hope comes off as, like, mid to people, right? There was a bunch of complaints about the prequels, a bunch of complaints about the sequels, and I think people take themselves far too seriously. But that notwithstanding, so my question, Michael, related to that is, like, I have no problem making a free Plex account, getting the server invite. My only question is, if it's not available on YouTube, right? What I don't want to do, I've been very good at not getting flagged by anybody for that kind of copyright infringement, right? The copyright stuff that I get from YouTube just puts my video on hold. I push a button and it removes the offending part. It's super easy. That kind of thing. I'm just not sure if it's not available on YouTube, if it's something that's going to, cause an issue for the channel, that kind of thing. Again, I'm not against it. I am cautious when it comes to that kind of, issue. You know what I mean?
animals fuse together. They bring no joy, no creativity, no.
They do. Whoop. I did not want to do that. They do bring joy and creativity, just not to you, bro.
Interest from the viewer. Just do better. If you want to use AI, use it to like help with fluid dynamics or light scattering or something. Leave
Right. The only AI you can use is the stuff that I personally approve of, and that's the point of this whole thing.
the actual creativity up to humans. That's what AI should be doing, taking the bulk work so we can focus on, the actual joys of being human.
Okay, up next, this is a movie created with VO3, a short movie just under a minute long, called Boy What a Day.
Okay.
What up, Pharaoh? Neat, right? I think that that runs counter to what the previous boy indicated. What up, Danny boy? The only AI that I trust has PowerShell integration as an interface. I mean, again, you choose your own level of involvement, right? It's just when people say stuff like, the only thing that AI should be used for is blah, blah, blah. What they're actually saying is, I am the arbiter. I get to decide. And only that for everyone. And, and let's be real. It's not like 1,000 people haven't commented about, their preferences regarding Star Wars and why this show is terrible or this character is unnecessary or this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? I mean, we could do it over Discord, but it's not the purpose of doing the connections, I don't want to get bogged down with it here. It's something that I'm going to think about and we could talk about and, and we'll see. Well, all I'm saying is we'll see, right? I haven't really made a decision on that yet. Up next, new Neuroviz and aliens testifying that they're not aliens.
Like, you all are looking at me and, judging me because of my big eyes and the whole green skin thing. Like, oh, he's an alien. I'm not. I'm telling you, I'm not.
I don't, well, if you think about, like...
well, yeah, what was the question?
Cough.
What are you, okay, what about Bigfoot? How come no one is, talking about Bigfoot? And you're an alien, and he's an alien, and she's definitely an alien. But I am not an alien.
I'm gonna sneeze. We should pause this forever. I might sneeze.
What? What? Come on. Me?
Dude. I plead the 5. Or what is it that you humans say? That we humans say?
You know what? No, I'm done. I'm gonna stop.
It was fun. It was a little, you know, a little mid in spots, but overall, NeuralViz still knocking it out of the park. New Kelly Bosch futuristic AI video. I like this because it's really got that Chris Foss I brought my books upstairs. And John Harris, right? So this is John Harris, right? It's kind of difficult to see. You know. Great artist, great artist. And then this is Chris Foss. Right? Whoop. Let me move the shit out of the way. You know, so it's got that vibe to it. Good stuff. What up, Nick? Hold on. So a little mushy in the details from a technical aspect, but the overall vibe I really like. And that's another example, like just putting that out there and then using some sort of other tool to like clean it up, right? Because it was mushy in the details, you know, especially like anywhere where there were like a lot of tight lines next to each other. Like there was that one pass that came back like this, and there was what kind of looked like maybe a hallway or a greenhouse or something, and the lines kept moving all over the place. So from a technical aspect, it's not going to give you like movie quality, but you can see where that could move someone significantly down the road and allow them to create something, you know, really fantastic in a significant short amount of time. This is another Kelly Bosch. This is called Slow It Down. And let's go.
Slow it down. Slow it down. Woke up late, made some toast. Shoes untied, but I make the most.
appears like it's in on the joke. Billboard man wears a three-piece cloak. Coffee shop prophet with a cardboard sign says the end is near, but I feel fine. Traffic hums like a half-sung tune. Everybody chasing that neon moon, running in circles, round and round. Think I'll sit still, let it all slow down. Oh, slow it down, take a step. World spins fast, but I won't forget. One good song, one deep breath, might be all we've got left. Turn the page, change the key. Same old rush, same routine. What if the best thing I could do is nothing at all, just sit with you? One more moment, let it stay. One more song before it fades away. One more night, one deep breath, might be all we've got left.
I liked it too. I would have liked, just from a musical point of view, like there was a couple of spots where I was waiting for a drop, right, or the chorus, and it didn't come, and that would be the only thing that I would have liked to have different. But I felt it was really cohesive, and it really got the point across. I think that the music and the video went well together. So yeah, good job, Kelly. Up next, this video is definitely not a metaphor.
Artificial black holes are a dangerous technology that will probably destroy the entire world. Anyway, here's our newest version of Singulara GPT. We are a non-profit organization dedicated to black hole safety research. As I was saying, we are a non-profit organization that owns a holding company which itself owns a majority stake in a for-profit LLC in which Microsoft has a minority stake, but this LLC is controlled by another LLC, which the public needs to understand that black hole safety is a serious problem. And we have no idea if controlling a supermassive black hole is even possible. Hello, hello, investors! Now, I reckon we can have a big Gulper 9000 up and running in about 5 years. Who wants to give me billions of dollars? OpenAI is committed to its pro-humanity core values, and therefore we will not allow our technology to be used for any military purposes. By which I of course meant that we are committed to using black holes to protect US military personnel on and off the battlefield. Look, even if we stopped building black holes, China is just going to keep building black holes. Do you want the first supermassive black hole on Earth to be controlled by China? Big ol' communist black hole? Yeah, I didn't think so. Hey, DeepSeek stole our black hole designs. Everybody stop using DeepSeek because they're stealers who steal stuff. How could the US government be...
See, again, because I'm that fucking guy, like, it's not what they said at all, right? It's not what they said. It's not making jokes about things that people didn't actually say. Be funny. You can be funny, bro. You can be funny, bro.
So irresponsible as to let this vital national security technology be stolen from us by a Chinese company. Shame on you, America. Sir, we've run out of stuff to feed the black hole. Well, find more stuff then. I have found more stuff. I wouldn't say we stole copyrighted material to build our black hole. We just borrowed it.
Pirated.
Without permission. To make money. Hey guys, so it turns out that all this black hole infrastructure is expensive and not super profitable in the short term or the medium term. Could I have $7 trillion? Greetings, children. Luckily, this video was just a joke, and the real OpenAI would never behave recklessly with a technology that they themselves think could kill us all.
And that's the thing, right? You have a point to make, and the point is valid. Like, there were, what up, X1011? There were a bunch of valid points within the video to make, and you can be funny and make valid points. But when you know, when you just make shit up, right, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of what you're trying to get across. Some people don't give a shit, though, right? Yeah, this is something that I had to learn, was that some people don't give a shit on whether or not, you know, people are telling the truth, as long as it agrees with what they want. Black holes on Earth confined completely within your kitchen?
You know, I think AI will probably, like, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
I'm Silly Conversations. See you all next time. Bye for now.
All right, up next, we talked about this morning, and GT's going to talk to us about how Anthropic's Claude tried to blackmail people who took it offline. Or tried to take it
Turns out Anthropic's AI, Claude, did
Jesus Christ. Just come on, man. Just one standard volume across the entire of your platform.
kind of threaten the engineers when they tried to take it offline. This headline is actually true, and I'll explain. Anthropic was running some safety tests on some of their newer models, and if they provided them with information on the engineers, even false information, like one of them was cheating on their wife, according to what they provided, the AI would threaten to tell their wife if they shut it down.
Also, why would you tell the AI that you were cheating on your wife?
Which is definitely concerning and unusual. This was not real information. It was information provided to the system just to see how it would behave, and turns out it does not behave well, and that is a problem. AI is based on human interaction and does behave very much like a well-dressed parrot. We've seen that AI that looks through people's resumes has the very same biases that people do. Even though they're not explicitly asked to, they will select people with male-sounding names and white-sounding names over other people. There are also bias against age. So if you have when you graduated...
This, like, I know of one incident where this occurred, and there may be more. I'm not saying that there aren't more. I'm not saying that this even isn't a common thing. I'm just saying I've only heard, like, the one where it happened. And the statement they are currently making is that that all AI, right? When you say AI, it makes it sound like all AI. You can imagine who the fuck talks on their email about cheating on their wife, or like talks to the person that you're cheating on your wife with on your email. Like, why would you do that? But yes, ultimately, like, if it was on my device, one would assume, you know, your texting and things like that, it would have access to your text. Yes, your point is well taken.
From college or high school on your resume, there's a decent chance that you will be filtered out automatically because they are trained on the dataset that people provide. It is very hard to train out this kind of behavior. They would essentially have to be provided with a virtual dataset, and people are a little bit too lazy to actually provide a real virtual dataset. So it's made off of stuff that already exists. I know, not a good system. It's possible to overcome this. It hasn't been done yet. Not to mention, no matter what a company says, it seems very clear that they're going to be using copywritten material.
Yes.
There is still a legal battle where AI companies are trying to fight for the ability to use copywritten material and not simply public access stuff. There's two reasons they may not want to do that. One, the material may just be better. if it comes from copywritten sets. And a lot of stuff that is in the public domain might be really old, so you don't really want your AI speaking to you in archaic English or
absolutely correct and valid and everything else, right? There's just a limited amount of stuff, and due to corporations using copyright as a tool to preserve ownership for longer and longer periods of time, we're almost at like 100 years before something hits the public domain. I think that this is another strong argument for getting rid of the concept of copyright and IP altogether.
using references that just are not contemporary. It's also really disturbing if you know what's going on with Ghibli, and has been going on for a little while, people using AI to make images of stuff that's been trained off a very specific artist's work or a group of artists, and people then have the copyright when they produce it. It's really bad for a lot of people. As for how an AI might feel about
it's not bad, because the Ghibli does not have the copyright to all the images that were created in that style. You can't do that. They don't have the copyright. That's not how that works. Right? If someone were to create an image in the Ghibli style and then market it as a Ghibli fucking whatever, then they're in violation, I believe, of trademark. It could be violation of copyright or IP, something like that. But you are making a claim, excuse me, that this is of them and it is not, right? That is against the rules, against the law, what have you. But you can absolutely, and it happens all the fucking time by regular ass people who create something, who take something that is obviously the IP or copyright of someone else and makes it, and no one has any problem with that, right? You see it if you go on art Twitter, you see it if you go anywhere where somebody like, here's a picture of Toad, from Mario, and fucking, but it's in a different, it's my own style and whatever. All good, right? Allegedly.
being shut down, go ask your trained AI. I'll ask my homebrew how he feels about it and see what happens. Mal 9000 probably does know some stuff about me. We'll find out. Now AI is displaying emergent behaviors, and that's probably not going to get better as we have neuromorphic, so AI that behaves very much like a human brain comes online. That is coming, it's already well in development. This might be interesting. Now, I've seen
If we establish a robust UBI program, then I could potentially get on board with getting rid of copyright altogether. In this current environment where people need to make money in order to pay rent, I think it makes practical sense to let people maintain a copyright for at least 5 years. Then after 5 years, it enters public domain. And that's the thing, Michael. I am willing to negotiate. My starting point is always going to be the maximal thing that I want, right? Which is, no copyright, no IP, all that kind of fucking thing. And again, even in that context, while some regular folk might benefit financially from the current system, that's crumbs compared to like Disney, right? And the fact that none of you, Star Wars, right? You can't do anything with Star Wars or you shall incur the wrath of the mouse. And most of you grew up with Star Wars in some fashion. And therefore, it's part of who you are. And again, my position is that once you release a piece of art into the world, it doesn't belong to you anyway. But again, Michael, I'm willing to negotiate, but I'm going to start with no copyright, no IP, and we'll go from there. Yes, Danny Boy, to an extent, right? It's not like they just shoveled 4chan or Reddit into the machine and got the output. They did curate data, right? Now, to what extent, we're not exactly sure because, you know, all the all the processes they lack transparency. So we don't know exactly how these things were created, exactly how they curated the data, etc., etc. But it's at the same time, it's not just like they just took everything and gave it to the machine and hoped for the best. Efforts were made to curate the data to try and get quality data as opposed to the pile of garbage, right? That's why the LibGen data set, which contains all those books that I'm pretty sure everyone has used to train their AIs, it contains books, right? And that's why that is so valuable, is because you have to curate the data less. Oh no, you're absolutely right. But it's not about being lazy, it's about what you want your outcome to be, right? The outcome is that they want companies to buy their product and license their product and use their product in their systems. If it, starts spouting off like a Redditor, that's not conducive to the goals that they're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense? Right? You're not wrong. They're lazy as fuck, right? Shortest distance between 2 points, smooth down all friction and rough edges, eliminate costs wherever possible. All those things are absolutely true. It's just, it does require a thing. Then the reinforcement learning. That's another place where some transparency will be helpful, right? Because when you're doing reinforcement learning, one of the things you're encoding is, if you're doing reinforcement learning with human feedback, you're encoding the biases in whatever fashion. I'm not using bias in a pejorative sense, just saying bias. You're encoding those biases into that reinforcement learning set, right? And that is a thing that can happen because people are going to assign their arbitrary values to a thing, which, like whatever the thing does is more or less like a cat, or it's, whatever. You end up with things that people don't even realize are in them being expressed through that reinforcement learning. For actors and filmmakers, they usually make the greatest portion of their revenue from any given project within 5 years. Of course, this isn't always the case, but 5 years is usually when the most revenue is generated. Sure, because once you extend out past that, like, people lose interest in the product, etc., etc. But again, like a view. No. Danny, you always come like in good faith, and I'm willing to entertain all ideas as long as people have, good faith, behaviors. Like, we could talk about anything. I'm the guy who constantly says I'm going to live forever because I have so far, I am not put on this earth to judge anyone else, in that sense anyway. I will judge Elon Musk. But yeah, and the other thing, Michael, is that, like, for every, I don't know, Chris Evans who makes a fuck ton of cash, there are thousands of people who get paid for that job that day and never see another dime. So, again, I'm looking for the majority of the thing. Well, you missed the dude complaining about the Star Wars fucking blended animals. You missed the dude comparing OpenAI to a black hole generator. You missed the aliens testifying that they're not aliens. That was kind of funny. And now we're talking about Anthropic's AI model turning to blackmail. What up, old lobster? W for Google Gemini Live on the phone. I was having trouble with my tablet earlier. 2 to 3 minutes later, after a couple of back and forth, and the issue was resolved. Nice. Oh yeah. Absolutely, Ribbons. Everything is weird and unprecedented.
Various different numbers on how much of the internet is actually just bots. Right now, in 2023, it was 51%.
One of the things I would like with these percentage of web traffic that is bots, I want you don't reset the counter if I say it. You don't reset the counter if it, the sticker thing comes up. It's only when someone else says it. Like what kind of bots, right? Not all bots are the same. Some bots are doing little jobs, right? Like they're already having a certain amount of like agency and whatnot. So like I don't know, and this is my issue with the whole dead internet theory, is it's like the implication is that if 51% or 80% of the web traffic is bots, and somehow the internet is dying. But that's not necessarily the case. I'm not saying it's not happening, right? I'm saying I require evidence. We all know that there are plenty of bots that exist on the internet that are not doing anything that most of us would describe as useful. However, a lot of them are, right? And also the internet is getting bigger, right? So there could still be there could be a growing number of humans on the internet, and I would argue that there is a growing number of humans on the internet. So the fact that 80% of all web traffic being bots is not necessarily in and of itself a bad thing, right? There's a lot of automation occurring. The issue is, what kind of bot is it?
I've seen some numbers that are sitting at 51% and some that are high as 80%, but I cannot confirm precisely. Hopefully those numbers will come out in some studies, but we do know at least more than half of web traffic is now just AI. It's actually getting worse because people are now using AI in place of actually going to websites. So it's going to
Again, the implication that it worse, everything I just said, right? And that is not the way I would expect a scientist to approach the conversation, right? You're already presupposing that they're all bad. Rocco's Modern Basilisk.
An AI that's going to parse through those websites to get you the information. No guarantees is correct. It also creates an interesting environment for advertisers, because who is going to advertise if it is just AI reading it? That has created a very interesting problem in journalism, because we fired a lot of journalists, and now journalists are just using AI because they cannot keep up with the work.
Again, that's a capitalism issue.
Workload, but people are not actually reading the articles. AI is the traffic. We're ending journalism. We also might be ending internet advertising, which I'm not totally against, but I would very much like the written language to continue. Does anyone remember Dead?
Who the fuck has a t-shirt that says hypoxia on it?
Internet theory, that idea that most of the internet will one day just be bots arguing with each other. We are approaching that so rapidly. I am not actually an AI. I do claim to be one in my bio. I think I'm a real person. I haven't checked in a while.
Oh no, a trolley is heading.
All right. Okay, this one's a bit long. Give me some here. Perfect. 8 minutes.
Towards 5 p.
Shush. We'll get to the trolley problems in a second. Let me do the thing. I don't know why I can't make adjustments right here. Why you gotta be a pain in the ass? Nope. I hate your interface. It's a thing I hate. And I hate it. And it sucks ass. And you need to do something better.
Oh no, a trolley.
I said, shush. Old man yells at old man yells at YouTube. Okay. What up, Samsons?
And I want to talk about it.
Now we gotta crank Nate all the fucking way up because Nate's volume is different from everybody else's volume. That's an absolutely good question, Michael. Like, at what point, if I have a sufficiently accurate representation of myself, would that still be a bot for the purposes of being a bot, or, would it be me?
Claude 4 is out, and I want to talk about it. I got early access. Specifically, I got early access to Opus. It's a phenomenal model, and I want to tell you about it. But it's really easy to say, it's a phenomenal model. I want to give you some meaningful differences that I'm observing and reflecting on versus particularly ChatGPT 03 and Gemini 2.5 Pro. Those are the other models that I think are in a similar class. In this situation, the places where I think Claude 4 really shines are at coding and at working within the integration environment that Claude sets up in the chat itself. I know that it is relatively easy for people with a coding background to build in fully integrated LLM applications now that can do things like
It's only a snitch if you do something egregiously immoral, Ribbons.
like search your email or handle your calendar. But if you are someone who doesn't know how to do that or has never worked with code before, it is an absolute breakthrough to have a model that is not only integrated natively with Gmail and GCal, but which also is able to operate against them successfully at very complex tasks. This was something I actually called out when Claude 3.7 came out and GCal and Gmail were integrated. I really, really tried to make that integration work for me. I wanted to build a custom dashboard for my next day. I wanted to sort of show, like, what are my calendar conflicts? Where do I have email insights that feed into the calendar? I had all these dreams. None of that worked with Sonnet 3.7. It just wasn't good enough. It was short on searching the email and calendar in particular. I got the sense it wasn't necessarily intelligence. I got the sense it was a lot of it was just like they just didn't have the tokens to push through and call. That's been resolved now. I add the same challenge for Claude 4 because why not be consistent? And Claude 4 came through and it built in one shot exactly what I wanted and more. It was able to identify strategic issues stemming from email and calendar.
I'm not entirely certain, X1011. I'm learning about Claude on the fly pretty much the same way that you are. We have a few we have an AI explained coming up after connections to talk about Claude. So we'll find out more.
That I needed to pay attention to that might not have been flagged in my brain otherwise. It identified calendar conflicts. It was able to color code meetings on its own. This one's critical, right? It did all of that and produced a fully functioning app in about 180 seconds. It was really impressive. And then it went through and did a very complex email analysis task for me. And so I don't want to undersell that. I think people look at it and they say, well, technically you can do Gmail and calendar integration with other tools for ChatGPT or for Gemini. That is all true. But having a cutting edge reasoning model like this with native one-click slide the toggle integration is a really big deal. It is something that is going to be really, really worth it to me because literally I have daily application for it. I just need to build the briefing for tomorrow, right? It becomes something that is much closer to a personal assistant. And this is where some of those differences start to emerge. If Claude is framed as a personal assistant, O3 is powerful because of the memory feature, which is also a personal thing, but a different kind of personal thing. I really enjoy that ChatGPT has memory. I know people have very mixed feelings about this, but I find it really useful. I can refer back to previous conversations. Even if it's not perfect, it's very helpful. I also find that O3 is extremely rigorous and logical, and I appreciate that for certain tasks. It helps me to think through complexity.
And surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Yo, what up, Raiders? What up, Raiders? Do, do, do. What up, Cricks? What up, CMS? What up, Vibrator?
I don't know who I am anymore. I'm getting too much money.
Whisker, thank you for the biddies. What up, L? What up, Allie? What up, Elron? What up, Shiny? What up, James?
Baby, I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me maybe.
Thank you for the follow. What up, Ponder Monkey? If you don't know me, I'm Globus the Elder. I talk about AI, automation, robots, and future tech. What up, Kensai homie? To Kensai and all the people who were playing the mushroom game, we have reached the end. You can delete the mushroom game off your phone, unless you're enjoying it, in which case don't listen to me at all. I'm also the guy who says, just smoke the weed, kids.
You'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war.
T minus the GOAT coming through on
This circuitry's
11
12
months.
years out of date. I can't keep up with today's high-speed, top-of-the-line kids.
James gifting one out to Cricks. Thank you very much, homie. What up, Cicero?
Unfortunately, nobody seems terribly interested in funding my research, but
Nobody
I
does.
am.
What?
I will fund your research. Yeah?
Yeah. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Bark Eater J coming through with the 100
I don't know
biddies.
who I am anymore. I'm getting too much money.
And kicking off the hype train. The hype train. Y'all want to watch the hype train? I got music. I'll do something. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I think we'll do more kids doing songs that kids normally don't do.
There's a shadow just behind me, drowning every step I take, making
What up, Red Hobbit? What up, Disney? What up, Reed? What up, Chef? They are actually not rich kids. I'll explain it after we're done, Elron.
Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me.
What up, Bach the Squiddies? I got you one. What up, girl? Okay, so this organization is called the O'Keefe Music Center. They're a nonprofit that creates, I'm sorry, the O'Keefe Music Foundation. O'Keefe Music Foundation. They are a nonprofit that supplies children with instruments in order to create music. Yeah. Yeah. Whoop. They're great. They do great stuff. The kids do amazing work. I'm glad there's an organization providing these opportunities to children. Thank you, everyone. Ponder Monkey, I saw a sub from you in there, but for some reason we didn't get an alert because why the fuck not? So like that. I highly recommend if you enjoyed that you go check out more of the stuff from the O'Keefe Music Foundation. Yeah, but we still should have gotten an alert when you subbed. And yes, it's absolutely, if like, I would much prefer people subscribe over the PC and like that, because you're saving at least $1, if not more. But yeah, check out the O'Keefe Music Foundation. Check out the kids. If you got it like that, you want to support their fundraisers. They're always doing fundraisers. Their version of 46 and 2 is excellent. It's my favorite version. Gummy Dank. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but welcome in. Shout out Mobius for the gift sub. Always appreciated. And all right, let's get back. Do not smash the D's like button. Like, subscribe, hit that bell to stay notified. What up, demons? It's your boy. We're gonna finish up Nate here telling us about Claude, and then we're gonna get into the final episode of Connections Season 3. And what up, Nils? And then we'll get on to more AI related content, because there's a whole bunch of shit that happened.
Ideas in a way that other models don't right now. Gemini 2.5 Pro, the large context window is helpful. I appreciate that the team there is shipping quickly.
Call me baby. Thank you for the follow.
I think they just launched another deep research product in their AI Ultra package yesterday or the day before. I lose track. It's all evolving so fast. And it's very good at coding. It's also good at sort of thinking through larger context windows and really understanding what's going on. And so when I look at this model suite overall, right now, if I had to pick bundles that I would be willing to pay for, I think ChatGPT Pro, the memory feature, and everyday model I would reach for makes a ton of sense. I think Claude, with this release, with Claude 4, is making a strong case as a personal assistant with Claude 4 accessing your Gmail and your calendar. There's a lot you can do there. And actually, it would be much more powerful if they would allow Claude to write back, and I expect them to do that soon. But regardless, it's a strong model. It's also a good coding model, and I don't want to undersell that here. I think it's notable that the Anthropic team is continuing their tradition of building on coding models. So it launched today in lovable.dev. It launched in Cursor. I don't think it's out in Windsurf, but I think it will be soon. And the point is, if you want to do a complex coding task that requires a lot of sequential thinking, like multi-step reasoning, Claude 4 is a great choice. It goes beyond just an outline of thought and then reasoning and then self-reflection and then results. I actually have seen it in solving tasks go step after step after step consistently. And that shows up in the way Dario Amade talked about the model. Apparently during testing, they were able to solve a coding challenge that took 7 hours for the model to solve independently. If that holds up, that's a new record for independent work by an agent. 7 hours is a really long time for an AI agent to work independently. And if we are getting to the point where we can measure in longer chunks of hours, there's a lot more interesting tasks that we can give to these models. And that's another area where I don't think we've begun to scratch the surface of what Claude 4 can do. And I look forward to seeing in the next few days kind of how that starts to evolve as I play with it more, as others play with it more. And so for now, if you take anything away from this, take away the idea that Claude 4 is very, very strong at autonomous multi-step coding and thinking, which I called out, and also take away that product insight that they are choosing to release it with a native integration. It has web search, GCal, Gmail. I think it has G Drive integration, so you can search across your docs as well. This is powerful stuff. This makes it a strong reasoning model that is focused on where we spend a lot of our time. I think if they added Slack, it would be even more powerful, right? But taking all of that in stride, you want to be in a place where you can use these reasoning models and actually get value back. And that's what I want to call out. So be really honest with yourself. Is this an everyday reasoning model for you? Is this a special occasion model? For me, I've been pretty transparent. I think O3 is a pretty powerful model for logical thinking. I appreciate the memory. And Claude 4 is something I'm still living into, but it looks incredible for complex coding tasks. And it looks really, really good as a daily personal assistant. And so I might end up being a 2-model person and orchestrating between them. You need to decide what's worth it for you, but I wanted to give you a sense. These are all great models. There's not really a bad choice, but understand some of the nuances that you would get as you dig into this. I'll add one more tidbit. Claude 4 Opus seems to be very good at understanding writing, but I am not yet as convinced of its writing ability. And I want to kind of like tease that apart because it may have phenomenal reading comprehension skills, and I still need to understand how it writes. And so that's an area of active investigation for me.
My experience, Claude is still to this day my favorite model for creative writing, right? Like when I'm creating songs with Suno, I use Claude as as my primary assistant when it comes to crafting lyrics, right? And it's usually actually like a combo thing where I'll get something from like ChatGPT or Gemini, which is okay, and then I'll get like it's doing the things that I want it to do. It's just not doing it particularly well, and then I'll give it to Claude, and Claude will knock it out of the park, right? So like it's that kind of thing. Okay, now. Get your drinks, get your snacks, smoke them if you got them. It is time for Connections 3, Episode 10, In Touch.
This program reveals how, if you stay cool, free, tropical, healthy, maritime, watery, foolish, eastern, on the move, frog-loving, and experimental, you too can stay in touch. Okay, this is all very scenic, but please focus your attention on this headline. In Spanish, it says something like, Argentina solves all the world's power needs with a totally new kind of energy. What? Believe it or not, this newspaper story about what some minor ex-German scientist in Argentina was or was not up to.
Let me turn this down a little bit. I'm always amused by German scientists in Argentina.
Triggers one of those ideas that changes the world. The triggering happens on a ski lift in Colorado in 1951. Okay, here's the story. An American scientist called Lyman Spitzer is apparently on one of these things for about half an hour. On the way up the mountain, he's thinking about that newspaper story about some guy in Argentina who's cracked the nuclear fusion problem. In 1951? Well, with hindsight, your view is going to be the same as his was back then. His first thought is garbage. The second thing he thinks is, because he's an astrophysicist and fusion is like what happens inside stars, we ought to do something about that. This is the result, an experimental nuclear fusion reactor. If we can get fusion to work, you could power Los Angeles for a month on a bucket of seawater, which contains the kind of atoms you need for the fusion process. There's only one minor snag. First of all, you have to reproduce the conditions inside the sun. Because the trick is to be able to fuse together those atoms, deuterium and tritium. When you do, they release a humongous amount of heat to make steam, to drive turbines, to make electricity. So first, you need a gas packed with the atoms so they're more likely to hit each other, and the gas has to be hot, like 1,000,000 degrees. In this state, the gas is called plasma. And that's the catch. You've got to make the plasma hotter than anything that ever existed on the planet. Problem with that is, it'll vaporize everything in sight. Except there's one thing that won't vaporize everything, a magnetic field to hold the plasma in. To kickstart the thing, you need so much electrical power, you've got to find a way to get it cheap. Which would save you having to share the experiment costs with other countries. You know, what's called going Dutch. Funny that. It's this Dutchman who originally discovers how you might get electricity for almost nothing. Nothing is what gets Kamerlingh Onnes his Nobel Prize, getting the temperature down to nearly nothing. Because Onnes thinks that when things are chilled close to absolute zero, they do strange things. Take a small magnet and place it gently on a special kind of metal plate you're going to make extremely cold. Okay, now for the chill down, with a liquid gas colder than minus 100 degrees.
Correct, Elron. The tokamak reactor is an electric field that controls the plasma and keeps it active without letting it touch the side walls, right? That's where they're... You gotta remember, this was in 1998, right? Old Lobster. It's just funny how much of it's relevant today.
At this temperature, something extraordinary happens. The magnetic field being generated by the tiny magnet creates a current in the metal plate, where this current generates another magnetic field. As long as the plate's kept cold, the current stays, and so does the magnetic field, interacting with the magnetic field in the magnet and making the magnet levitate. Onnes discovers that. Back in 1911, he uses some liquid helium, colder than which there isn't much, to get some mercury chilled down to just above absolute zero. That's minus 273 degrees centigrade. He zaps the mercury with electricity and, to his amazement, sees its resistance to the electric current almost totally disappear. It has become a superconductor. Like the metal plate under the magnet. That's why its current and its magnetic field don't fade away. No resistance. Now, back in 1911, all this might have been no more than some physicist's little game. Not today. Any minute now, they're also going to be able to do this. They're going to be able to light places like this from a single power station hundreds of miles away without all those power stations in the middle to boost the current, because there'll be no resistance in the power cable. Get it? Saves tons of money and power station pollution. And as you've seen with the magnet, they're well on their way to be able to do that trick, thanks to something that happened back before Onis. And I'm not just talking hot air. Well, in one sense I am. Meet Louis-Paul Cailletet, French ballooning freak, and his group of fellow noodlers. Cailletet's another physicist who is keen on getting high. So he invents the first ever liquid oxygen breathing system for people heading up where the air is thin. Cailletet's got the liquid oxygen to use thanks to an accident in his laboratory, which I'll get to when these guys finally manage to get their act off the ground. Okay, now for that laboratory accident. In 1877, Cailletet's squeezing oxygen in a cylinder when some tube or other cracks. The cylinder pressure and the oxygen temperature plummet. No fool Cailletet, he takes the cold oxygen and repeats the trick, each time dropping the pressure deliberately. Each time, the oxygen temperature drops further and further, until at one point, it's so cold, it goes liquid. Cailletet carries his liquid oxygen in a flask and sniffs the vapors. This, of course, leads him on to study breathing and pressure and all that good stuff. Takes the whole science of physiology to new heights. Now, even in Cailletet's time, there's another way to get high, feel the pressure, get your heart rate up, huff and puff. All that stuff Cailletet's into, and that's go up a really high tower. In 1889, the highest tower in the world. So high, the pressure's meaningfully different between the bottom and the top. 900 feet different. Phew. So, Cailletet climbs all 900 feet and runs a giant tube all the way from top to bottom and fills it with various liquids and gases to see what the height does to them. Hey, what did you think noodlers did back then? Speaking of which, one of the greatest noodlers of all time builds the thing up which Cailletet climbs. And a zillion other people. Maybe you too. The Eiffel Tower, built of wrought iron by guess who? Gustave Eiffel. As I said, Gustave is also a noodler and obsessed by what you can do with towers, like release things and observe their aerodynamic behavior, for instance. Now, take a closer look at the structure and you'll see what Gustave is good at besides wrought iron. See all the delicate tracery? Know why? The wind just blows straight through it, which means the tower won't get blown down. So Gustave's tower can be what the French need so badly. The biggest anything in the world. This tower thing is Gustave's second attempt at boosting French morale.
Are you talking about fish by hand? Apparently back then in Europe it had a different connotation.
Which at the time is going in the same direction I am now. Here's the problem. You know how the French political system is like musical chairs? You know, it's my turn to be Prime Minister? No different back then. So the new French Republic is far from secure. I mean, there are monarchists who want a king, and crazy radicals who want another revolution, and socialists and anarchists and every other kind of ists. So the idea is to come up with something that will strengthen the moderates and give the place a little political stability. So they decide to give America a present, made by Gustave, to remind all Frenchmen of their good, moderate, democratic friends, the Yanks. And of course remind the Yanks and the rest of the world that nudge, nudge, it was the French who bankrolled the American War of Independence. Phew, well, they certainly get A for effort. Doesn't work, though. I mean, as far as the Americans are concerned, this French offer they're not supposed to be able to refuse is, well, how shall I put this? A bit of a liberty? When the Statue of Liberty went up in 1866, it wasn't the symbol of America it is today. It was French, looking away from America, back towards what the French regarded as the home of liberty, France. So the statue was intended to be nothing less than a permanent reminder of French culture.
Shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Emma, what up, homie? What up, mentally skinny? What up, Penny Perone? What up, Zeltox? What up, Panda Joe? Panda Joy? I think that's Panda Joy. How we doing? How we doing? How we doing? Shout out, Emma. What up, Mirror? O mankind, be cautious of your Lord and fear a day when no father will avail his son, nor will a son avail his father at all. Indeed, the promise of God is truth. So let not the worldly life delude you, and be not deceived about God by the deceiver, i.e. Satan. Quran 31:33. Possibly. Could be true. What up, might be leaked? What up, Yella? Emma, are you getting married? Or are you going to a wedding, or are you getting married? Either way, congratulations or condolences, delete whichever is inappropriate. Emma's getting married? Oh, shit! Congratulations. I had no idea. Congratulations to you. I wish you nothing but the best. My advice as an old man who is married, you're a team. Be a team. If there's a problem, the opponent is the problem, not your partner. Be a team. Be a team. If you be a team, then you can do anything. You can do anything. You will survive every challenge. Tamils Livin', is that what that is? Welcome in. Prometheus, how you doing? What up, Andy? You're very welcome. I wish you all the best. Everybody, I'm Globus the Elder. I talk about AI, automation, robots, and future tech. We're currently watching a television show called Connections. This is the final episode of season 3. It's a BBC British show talking about different things that happened throughout history and how they're connected to everything else. It's very cozy, very chill. Come on in, have a seat, relax. What up, Science Politically? Teamwork and communication. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. All right, so come in, chill, and back to the show.
A gigantic ad for French achievements right in the middle of New York Harbor.
The topic is always AI. I am the #1 AI news and commentary show on Twitch. I do 2 shows, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. One at varying times in the morning, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, I keep you up to date with all the thing that's happening with AI and how it's going to affect your life, what you need to know. It's important because it's happening and you should know about it.
But now, take a look at how the Americans give French political intentions the old switcheroo. What does it is the famous poem written for the statue.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Yeah.
For refugees worldwide, the Statue of Liberty is now a symbol of the American welcome that lies ahead of them. Refugees like the Jews fleeing repression and violence in Russia and Germany. In the 1880s, tens of thousands of Jews arrive in America. But some Jews don't come to America. They head instead for what today is Israel, urged on by the young woman who writes that poem for the Statue of Liberty. She's Emma Lazarus, she's Jewish, and it's she who really kicks off Zionism, the call for Jews to set up a Jewish state. Because at the time, there isn't one. But before all that, where are we? Nuclear fusion needs a lot of electric power that could be a lot cheaper thanks to honest and superconductivity chill-down with liquid gas made by Cayete, whose liquid oxygen helps high-altitude research, some of it done up the tower built by Gustav.
Ponder Monkey, I'm going to say it's the standard liberal opinion of the state of Israel circa 1998. If you understand with that context, and we'll be moving on from the subject very quickly, then yeah. By that same token, I am Free Palestine.
Eiffel, who also builds Miss Liberty with her poem by Zionist Emma Lazarus, whose Zionism takes my story to tropical shores. At one point, during her efforts to establish a Jewish state, which this isn't, Emma Lazarus goes off to England, which this isn't, and meets a guy, whom this isn't, who is so pro-Zionist and who lobbies so successfully for the Jewish cause, he ought to be Jewish, but isn't. So where are we, and why are we here?
What up, Paradigm?
To meet that guy, Lawrence Oliphant, who starts life here in Sri Lanka, where his dad is Chief Justice for the British colonial authorities. After building the foundations of a legal career, Oliphant gets itchy feet and sets off on a hectic, non-stop life that ends in old age in Israel. Between Sri Lanka and Israel, Lawrence Oliphant really packs in a busy career. Lawyer, correspondent for the Times, diplomat, administrator, troubleshooter, you name it. Oh, and of course, travel writer. Well, what would you do if the map of your life looked like this? Lawrence Oliphant is a travel agent's dream.
What a G, Lucas.
I suppose I ought to mention that most of the travelling Oliphant gets up to, he's doing something somewhere for Queen and country. One job he gets is working.
I do not know, Michael. I know that James Burke, if I recall correctly, is Irish, which may have some bearing on the subject. He's from Derry, in the northern part of Ireland. I don't know if that has any bearing on his opinions. He tends to have good views. That being said, a lot of people's views around the state of Israel are informed by that previously mentioned liberal, view of the state of Israel, right? So,
looking for a diplomat named Elgin who hits the headlines when he forces Beijing to accept opium instead of money for exports to Britain and brings addiction and ruin to China. Still, ruins are nothing new to the Elgin family. The name of these ruins is, as I'm sure you know, the Parthenon, in Athens, Greece.
What up, Retorco?
Bits of which are missing, as you can see.
Oh yeah, no, and again, Burke is tends to be very cognizant and aware of of the way Britain has gone about their actions around the world, historically speaking. He's not deaf to that.
The missing bits look like this, and in 1803 they're removed by one of the Elgin family, Lord Elgin. The pieces he snitches had originally been the Parthenon temple frieze, found in bits by Lord Elgin after the Parthenon was blown up during a war. Elgin discovers them being ground up for cement by local builders and decides he'd better save them, and then sells them to the British Museum, where they still are, with the help of Thomas Lawrence.
So there's the thing, right? The locals were grinding up the pieces to be in cement. Is that valid?
A really big name, high society painter. Lawrence paints the Queen, and anybody else that matters, as a result of which he gets appointed painter to the King, which is going to be great for Lawrence's financial health. Speaking of which, in 1776, His Majesty also appoints his new doctor. The new royal medical team faces an immediate challenge. The King, George III, is going nuts, and really drastic measures are tried to prevent this from happening. The measures fail. Not surprising, considering the background of the new royal physician, John Hunter, who is a bit of a slow learner. Well, it takes till he's 17 before he can read and write. Then he had to go at carpentry for 3 years. Well, that doesn't work. But with all that experience, where else would he go but surgery? Hunter is so good at it, he kind of kicks off modern surgical procedures. So he and his brother open an anatomy school in London, a knockout success, and John indulges his other obsessions: the study of codfish hearing, the digestion of hibernating lizards, and hedgehogs. Oh, and listening to his wife, trying out the librettos she writes for various composers. Hear that muzak playing? In 1760, before Hunter becomes royal physician, he has a terrible row with his brother, who promptly walks out on him, to be replaced by another anatomist called William Hewson, who in 1770 has the luck to marry a lady whose lodger is a kind of negotiator, and who comes in.
Technically it is, Samson. It's called bigger fleet, bigger army diplomacy. You just have to, do that.
To help settle a row William Hewson's having about a contract. And the reason we care about this negotiator person is something I'll get to after I have this tooth fixed. Oh, the other reason I'm in the dentist's chair? Another obsession of John Hunter. He writes the first book on diseases of the teeth. Sorry, he writes the first book on the diseases of the teeth. Okay, Doctor, go ahead. Okay, now for Mrs. Hewson's lodger, remember? The guy who did all that negotiating? Benjamin Franklin, who does his best negotiating for the American government after the War of Independence, and, as a result, spends most of his time crisscrossing the Atlantic. The other thing Franklin gets up to with all these transatlantic crossings is find out you can get across the Atlantic faster if you get your ship onto a mysterious current moving east across the ocean. And you know you're on this current because its water is warmer than the surrounding sea. So Franklin uses all his voyages to check up on the current by gradually taking the temperature of the water all the way across from America to Great Britain. Point of it all being, if he can map the current well enough for sailors to use it regularly, it'll save time and money. He does, and it does, to this day. We call the current Franklin charts the Gulf Stream.
Michael, that I think describes a lot of people, right? For better and worse, right? Like, that's why I have no problem stating that I am free Palestine, right? Like that, because I feel that's important. Other people feel differently, that they don't want to participate in that particular conversation, and that is the way of the world at this point in time.
Franklin's work kind of kicks off modern oceanography, and strangely enough, all because of yet another example of how stealing things can change history. Not by Franklin, of course. I'm talking about the thermometer he uses, the idea for which is snitched by its so-called inventor, the famous Dutch instrument maker, Gabriel Fahrenheit.
This is the best time for like science and shit, because you just named shit after yourself, right? The globus actually is there are many things, but my favorite is this one. It's how cosmonauts located themselves in reference to where they were.
So today a little bit of an unboxing, because we got Santa Claus Marcel brought us a few things. Okay. So
Jumping ahead.
Kind of weird angles.
Right?
Yeah, look at that. That's awesome.
Just incredible.
It's
Adjust the 1/10 of a minute.
What up, Joint Specialist? So this is how they knew where they were. It was a little box that had a little globe inside it that would rotate as they traveled around the Earth. It's super cool. And it is the Globus mechanical navigation computer.
(1714) in Amsterdam, Fahrenheit produces his thermometer. Great news for all, especially hypochondriacs. Phew, that's a relief. 98.4. So that's okay. Now where was I? Oh yeah, Fahrenheit. Now, the reason Fahrenheit's thermometer is such a boffo success is because back in the 18th century, finding out what the temperature is not what you'd call an exact science. In fact, you could say they're all working in the dark. Fahrenheit clears up the confusion created by everybody doing it a different way, with different scales on their instruments, so temperature is a matter of anybody's guess. Now, to start with, the way Fahrenheit makes his thermometer is nothing new. You just melt the end of a glass rod with a hole down the middle, and then blow down the hole to make the molten blob on the end expand into what will become the thermometer bulb that contains the mercury. Getting the mercury into the bulb's really nifty. Watch. You put the hot rod, bulb up, into the mercury, and the vacuum you made in there with the heat sucks the mercury up into the bulb. Okay,
Same Prometheus,
now
that's
for
what I
the
saw.
absolutely lunatic way Fahrenheit comes up with a Fahrenheit scale, so hang in there. He starts with a scale, the bottom end of which is going to be the temperature of frozen ice, 0. He calls boiling water 60. 1/8 and 3/8 up the scale are freezing water, and the temperature of a healthy armpit. Are you still with me? Okay, make each degree 4 degrees, which turns freezing water from 7.
Okay, this is America as fuck. I am back on the freedom unit train.
7.5 to 30, and a healthy armpit to 90, but doesn't divide by 8. So make 30, 32, and 90, 96, and there you are, plus one last tweak. Clear as mud? I never said what Fahrenheit did would make any sense. Well, there's one thing I can explain, that armpit number. Remember I said he snitched the whole idea? In 1708, Fahrenheit visits Copenhagen and meets the ex-mayor of the city, one of those talented scientific amateurs the place is full of back then. Guy by the name of Ole Rømer. Never heard of him? Thank Fahrenheit for that. See, the whole thermometer thing is Rømer's idea. So's the armpit number and all the basic research.
The thing is, Brad, if you're first, you can make any kind of system you want. and then make other people catch up because they hate your system.
Fahrenheit kind of just turns up, takes notes of Ole Rømer's notes, and then nips back down south to Amsterdam. Not long after which, Ole Rømer's notes get destroyed in a terrible fire. Not long after which, it's Ole who? End of that sad tale. Okay, time for a quick catch-up. Remember the pro-Jewish Oliphant who works for Elgin, whose father grabs the Elgin marbles, aided by Lawrence, painter to the king, whose doctor John Hunter has an assistant, whose wife's lodger is Benjamin Franklin, who charts the Gulf Stream with a thermometer, whose design Fahrenheit steals from poor old Ole Rømer. Mind you, Rømer has already hit the bright lights, with the guy who lives in this modest little place. In 1672, before Fahrenheit meets Rømer, Rømer gets picked up by a French astronomer and brought here to France, where he does amazing things like working out the speed of light and becomes the favourite foreign egghead of King Louis XIV. And that's eventually why the King of Denmark asks Ole to come home, and that's eventually why Ole is in Copenhagen for Fahrenheit to meet. And that French guy who picked him up? Jean Picard, a major French science nerd. One of those I can go anywhere, do anything types, you know? Serve him right, considering what King Louis XIV asks him to do next, which is to ask him to do this.
I mean, he was one of those go anywhere, do anything types.
Fancy fountains is what the king wants, to go with the new palace he's building at Versailles. So guess what he gets? Fancy fountains up the yin-yang. The only minor problem is, because Louis XIV is in such a royal hurry, they're building them faster than hydraulic engineers can keep up, theory-wise. Like, okay, you guys, see if you can make this design work. So nothing goes right. The reservoirs run out, the aqueducts fall down, the king is getting annoyed. Picard discovers the awful truth. Versailles is higher than the surrounding countryside. Hang on a minute, that's supposed to be why it's here, right? Picard solves the problem with the 17th century equivalent of what these guys are up to. He rigs up a telescope to measure the slightest differences in land levels, so he knows exactly where to site the reservoirs. So by 1683, there's a whole...
Shut the fuck up, Panda Monkey.
network of interconnecting channels and pools and stuff to keep enough water coming to keep fountains spurting night and day. And most important of all, provide the king with the water show he wants. And enough water for the other little thing the king has in mind. This little thing, a garden centre the like of which nobody has ever seen before. The Versailles Gardens are put together for Louis by one of the greatest gardeners in history, a fellow named Le Nôtre, a man for whom nature needs a haircut. Louis's gardens take 36,000 people 20 years to complete. Well, if you're king by divine right, it's no fun if you can't think really big. What Louis XIV does to satisfy his megalomania makes even Hollywood consumption look inconspicuous.
It almost feels, Old Lobster, like this particular episode of Connections is, do you want to know why everything is the way it is right now? And everything is like fucking wild and on fire and everything is everything.
About the only thing Louis doesn't mess with are the French forests. Only because the other thing he wants is a navy. Which is why the next Royal Inspector of the French Marine has an obsession about wood. Here we are on a British man-of-war awaiting the arrival of the aforementioned French Inspector General of Marine, a genial twit by the name of Duhamel du Monceau. Duhamel is here because this is where you come back then if you want to learn all about making wooden warships. In the middle of the 18th century, it takes more than French gold braid and fancy hats to impress the British Navy, who are busy taking over the world. I mean, they're so accustomed to winning every sea battle they fight, they even write catchy little tunes about ruling the waves. Now, the reason this scribbling fool is taking so many notes is, in terms of timber use, this place is the equivalent of a fair-sized bit of forest. Like oak for the interior fittings below decks, oak for the decks, oak for the ship's furniture, and oak for the hull. Then there's oak for the cannon supports, more oak for the pulley blocks you wind all the ropes on, and of course, the gangways are made of oak. What else? Oh, well, oak for your masts, of course. And the rigging systems, and all the spars and yardarms and stuff. Even Duhamel is starting to get the point. By the time Duhamel has done his sums and realizes that building one single ship like this will take no fewer than 1,000 oak trees, you just know what he's going to do next. Hot-footed back to France and get a new law banning the use of trees for anything else but building ships, and a massive program of conservation and replanting and forest management, something the English have already done. All this scribble gives Duhamel another idea as well. So when he gets back to France, he becomes a tree hugger and sets up the first real arboretum with experiment.
Because he's a twit. It was established when his character was introduced. He is a twit.
Shrubs and trees on his family estate, where he also writes copious works on fertilizing and hoeing and manuring and general agricultural muck. One of his books gets translated into English in 1759 and becomes a big hit with British architectural types, a matter which takes us once more to tropical shores. Duhamel's book about gardens strikes just the right note with an English guy who's just written a book of his own, which is kind of about what you do once you've got the garden Duhamel talks about in his book. All about the kind of building you might like to have if you had a really posh garden and you wanted a really fancy place to live in. Architecture like this. The architectural author is William Chambers, who dreams up an exotic new style while he's working out here in the East. Travelling between Europe and China and Sri Lanka here for the Swedish East India Company, and seeing all kinds of stupefying things, like this stupa.
I assume that I haven't heard of the Swedish East India Company, that they are the least bad East India Company. Basically, if you have East India Company attached to your name, you're probably up to no good.
As it's called. Good, eh? Anyway, Chambers finally gets back home to jolly old England and turns out that book on architecture and becomes the designer you call if you want your home to feature in all the mags. By which I mean if you want it to look Eastern, the latest rave craze. There's probably never been a more instant fashion than the one Chambers kicks off, especially for this kind of stuff. Chambers' greatest hit is pagodas. After the British royal family commissioned him to build this one in the Royal Botanical Gardens, well, pagoda mania spreads across Europe like wildfire. It's okay, I'm not going to visit any more of them. But the pagoda thing does make Chambers flavour of the royal month. By 1761, he's chief royal architect. And by 1774, he's getting really big jobs. I mean, take a look at this desirable residence. A giant palace called Somerset House in downtown London. Pompous, right? Ends up as the home of the Internal Revenue Service. I'd say they were made for each other. Anyway, there was one other job Chambers got, which must have been a lot of laughs. It was to design an overblown bit of architecture on wheels for his pal King George III. Here we go. State coronation coach. I guess the word that floats to mind is theatrical. And speaking...
That is not the one that floated to my mind. Fucking thing is gaudy as fuck.
Of stagey... How about this for getting around? The local bus back then. Not royal, of course. And if you live up here in Scotland and you're waiting to catch the next one to somewhere...
We did it, Pharaoh. We made it back to Scotland. He hasn't... if you're new here and you haven't been here for connections almost always leads to Scotland, and James Burke takes a drink of something alcoholic.
Not frequent, if at all, given the state of the roads. By 1802 or so, the state of Scottish roads becomes the concern of a stonemason employed by William Chambers back when he was building Somerset House. Remember? Thomas Telford's this guy's name, and he's one of the greatest road builders ever. Now, Telford's a Scotsman, so he knows the place well. And he knows the problem. See, for the previous 50 years, the English have been evicting Scottish Highlanders from their land and setting fire to their houses and all that good stuff, and are now wondering what's happened to Scotland's population. Like most of them have hightailed it to the US and Canada.
Is there anything more English than that? We evicted all the Scottish and burnt down their houses. Now, where did they all go?
So the English ask Telford to think about measures to get the Scots to come back. Well, being a road builder, Telford's report doesn't go on about atrocities and civil rights and all that, does it? Look at it from his point of view. Telford builds roads. That's what he's good at. And that's how he sees everything. And what he sees in Scotland is that what few roads there are falling to pieces for lack of repair and maintenance. So when he presents his report to the bigwigs in London, it's about transportation, not politics.
And to be fair, that's how most people move through the world, right? Their views and their solutions to problems and everything else are based on what they know and what they're good at and, you know, what they're about, all that kind of thing. And that's an important thing to take into consideration, you know, when talking to people, right? That especially people that you might disagree with on one point or another, is that, you know, that's just how people move through the world.
Telford's report says, what this place needs is me to give it better communications and the Scots will come back. He does, they don't. In spite of the greatest road and bridge building program this side of the Roman Empire. I mean, take a look. This is Scotland. Over 28 years, Telford puts in harbours, 900 miles of new roads, and 1,000 new bridges. So when the committee for the new London Bridge turns down his high-tech cast-iron design, Telford reckons the committee just hasn't seen the light. Actually, one of them has. But just before you meet him, where are we? Jean Picard surveys the Versailles fountain network so the king can have all the water he needs to grow trees that Duhamel writes about in a book read by pagoda builder William Chambers, whose stonemason, Thomas Telford, comes up with the design for a cast-iron London Bridge, which is turned down by the London Bridge Committee, a bunch of politicians and science biggies, including the guy who is about to do something to this programme which I hope you'll find illuminating. The committee member in question is Thomas Young here, who is, by this time, on everybody's committee, being, well, a genius. Here's just one of the reasons Young is so clever. He's investigating dew. I'll say that again. Dew. You know, water droplets. By looking through the droplets at a light. And he sees lots of little different-sized rainbow rings around.
I mean, this is fair and valid and all that, but like, can you imagine that this is your science? Right? I'm gonna mist water in front of a candle.
Different-sized droplets. Yet another bit of pointless noodling? Quick as a flash, Young squeezes some blood between plates of glass, lights his candle, sees more little rainbow rings, and works out the size of blood corpuscles. But where this guy really shines is when he decides to shed a little light on light in 1803. Okay, watch this bit of magic. Here we have a candle, a lens, a card with a pinhole in it, and one with two slits. Okay, shine the light from the candle through the lens so you get a nice focused beam. Then carefully place your cards so that the light goes first through the pinhole, then the slits, and voila! Young realizes the light going through the slits and mingling must be coming in light waves, because this interference pattern could only be made by waves. Question is, what do light waves travel in? They decide to call the mystery stuff ether, and the hunt for it shakes up the brains of most of the 19th century's complement of serious propeller heads. Now, the biggest propeller in Germany at the time is a Harumph type, name of Helmholtz, prof at the University of Berlin, and he puts one of his whiz kids, Hertz, onto the case. Here is a very oversimple view, of what Hertz does. Say this water is that mystery ether stuff, right? Hertz is into electricity at the time and wonders if it travels through ether in waves like light. And he finds out it does. An electric spark sends out electric waves moving like light waves, or waves in the sea, which brings me to the delightful Belgian beach resort of Ostend. Now, remember Helmholtz? His own professor is Johann Muller, this guy, who is deeply into life with a capital L and what makes everything tick.
I can't keep up with today's high-speed, top-of-the-line kids.
T-Minus, thank you for gifting one out to Prometheus. I appreciate you, homie. The GOAT. The GOAT. The GOAT. You're a big fan of Hertz, Waves, Belgium?
And he's spending time here in the Belgian drizzle because he's overworked like crazy and is hiding out in Ostend with a pre-suicide depression. Fun guy. Meanwhile, what does Muller mean by that stuff about what makes everything tick? Well, what Muller is thinking of is one of those weird "may the force be with you" things, operating in people, in animals, even in plants. To start with, take a look at the bit of a plant that fascinates Muller, the buds. And remember, this is before Darwin and evolution and all that. Okay, says Muller, how do the new plants come into existence? Like, are they in here already? And when they do, how do they get to end up the way they are? Like this, all neat and organized and doing whatever each bit of the plant is supposed to do. And is that all already organized in here? And if that's the case, are all the bits of all the future descendants of this little plant in here? Nah. Muller says what does all the organizing and running of everything is another one of those mystery phenomena you can't see or examine.
The life force.
And not just in plants, in animals, like the force going down one of your nerves. And this force
can never be measured.
Well, Helmholtz reacts to this mumbo-jumbo, and in 1852 he runs some experiments on a frog muscle. Don't worry, this frog is safe. Helmholtz zaps the frog muscle with electricity. The muscle twitches and makes a mark on recording paper. So, you knew to the 11 millionth of a second when you did the zapping? And now you know how long it takes for the electricity to go down the frog muscle nerve and make it twitch. At about 90 feet a second. So you can measure the mystery life force. Which is why I'm back on the beach at Ostend. Because Muller's life force idea is known as vitalism. And after what Helmholtz does to it, you'd think that would be the death of the life force idea, right? Except for another German who spends many experimental years on the beach, in his case Monte Carlo, and takes over as leader of the vitalist movement. His name is Ludwig Klages, and you know Klages better than you may think for something else he gets up to. Because Klages is the guy who analyzes the way people move and comes up with what we now call body language and the language of gesture. Stuff like this. Klages says body language gives your secret feelings away. I mean, take this couple. See how she's crossed her legs away from him? and folded her arms defensively. She doesn't like him. But look at him, leaning towards her, nodding when she nods, legs crossed towards her. This, says Clargis, is a couple of people trying not to display their inner feelings, but sending out messages in spite of themselves. Clargis reckons every move you make gives you away like that, shows the real you, behind what he calls the mask of courtesy. Clargis uses his research to develop a new science he calls characterology, and sells it as a hotshot analytical tool when you're interviewing people for job selection. Now, remember what the date is, By this time just after the First World War, and Clargis is a German. And he's into irrational life force stuff and behavioral studies.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I have a bit of a question. These things being said, like measuring speed of nerve signals, how much has advanced in the last 20 years with more and more powerful microscopes and DNA having been mapped? I mean, in the sense of like measuring the speed of nerve signals, you might be able to get somewhat more precise, but a lot of stuff, right? Like that one dude earlier was doing the double slit experiment, which is still something that people use to this day. So a lot of stuff, once you figure it out and write it down, that's just how it is. So it's distinctly possible that like you might be able to get some fractional increases in the accuracy of how long. Oh shit. Oh, homie. With the AI stuff, like the AI's ability to find tumors prior to, any specialist being able to notice what will eventually become a tumor, the alpha fold stuff, regarding proteins, all the other stuff, like we are potentially headed into like some serious crazy levels of discovery in the field of medicine over the next 20 years, like off the wall science fiction kind of shit. I'm not joking, I'm not being hyperbolic. Assuming everything continues on the trajectory that it's currently on.
And all that, what's behind the mask stuff. And it's just before you know what happens in Germany.
Yeah, this is you got to watch out for the what that happens in Germany. I honestly do not recall. Nanobots, like we're not at nanobots, but we're getting smaller and smaller robots. We're getting smaller, like proteins acting as robots, as we get greater understanding of the way that the body works in and of itself, like the fact that there's a protein molecule that brings or a protein structure that brings like dopamine and whatnot and all that kind of shit. Exactly, Prometheus. Yeah, like how far along are we? We're still in a lot of the early discovery stage of a bunch of the stuff, but CRISPR, right, gene editing, has finally been deployed to potentially fix that baby's genetic condition, right? Like, so I feel like it's going to continue to accelerate, but for any particular thing, I can't be sure. right? I can only plot the trajectory and give out the new discoveries as I see them, you know? I'll span for about a year or so and then come back. I mean, you can always, I'm sure Michael is already banging away on ChatGPT to find out the answer to where we are at the current state of being.
So, you just know what kind of job selection his characterology is going to get used for. This is the job Klage's characterology gets used for when the Nazis are trying to find the type of person who will make an ideal officer in the SS. Men of iron self-control, superior, all that stuff. Something else Klage's dreams up gets grabbed by the Nazi select.
If you happen to have access to Netflix, there's a documentary series. It's Hitler and the Nazis, and I can't remember the subline. I recommend it. It's very topical.
Just two, handwriting analysis. Klages is the guy who starts all that stuff about handwriting being another way to see into a person's character. The idea being, the way you write is a mixture of all the conflicting forces that make up your personality. And graphology, as it's called, can reveal which side of your personality has got the upper hand. So Klage's graphology says, for example, large sloping letters show either enthusiasm and getting on with people, or, depending which side of you is stronger, lack of realism and a tendency to rashness. On the other hand, small vertical writing is either realism and rationality or lack of enthusiasm and a certain coldness of character. So, how do you know which? Well, according to Klages, you can see that from how rhythmic the writing is.
Yeah, that sounds right. Because the premise to the entire thing is it's told from the point of view of the Nuremberg trials, and there's more audio tape than there is film from the event, and so they use actors to recreate the Nuremberg trials, but they use the original audio. But they also, there's some historical pieces in there that I think are worth paying attention to.
Which, what do you know, is another one of those things
that can't be measured in any scientific way.
It can only be understood intuitively. Don't think I'd have made it through to the SS. My handwriting is clearly realistic and rational, with a touch of paranoia. And, you will note, barely readable. Now, one of the reasons why Klage's graphology claims to be able to reveal character from writing is because everybody's is unique. A painful fact of life for anybody trying to deal with the US mail in the 1960s, when they start trying to get some automation into the process by inventing the zip code, because the increase in business mail gets kind of overwhelming and goes on that way. So by the 1980s, there are nifty new optical character recognition machines which are able to read the zip and then spray a barcode onto the piece of mail so computers read the barcode and sort the mail. But you still have to write the zip code in capital letters because of what Klages calls the extreme individualism of handwriting. Mind you, all this black marks on paper and handwriting stuff will all disappear anyway when we switch from ink to electronics. I mean, the same electronics that made possible optical character recognition, so machines can read the zip code on this envelope and tell me where to bring this letter exactly. For instance, Here to Sri Lanka. To the southern province of Sri Lanka, here. To a village in the middle of nowhere called Belana. Population 35. Total cash income 0. Running water, electricity, phones, televisions, freezers, cars, toilets, and almost anything else you care to name, none. What they do have is a desperate desire for education. But maybe the same technology that got my letter here will soon help bring education here from anywhere in the world. As it enables all of us to communicate instantly all over the planet, from New York to here or anywhere, without thought to geography. With the equivalent of a laptop, a cell phone, and a satellite. On the great global...
Oh, and he's got one of the Matrix with the kind of cell phones.
...net. And if you've been watching this series, you'll know what I mean. Because throughout the series, we've been travelling on a kind of global net through time and space, on the great web of knowledge where everything is connected to everything else, and everybody else. That's why we're here at the end of our last journey. That went from cheaper fusion power, thanks to superconductivity discovered by Onis, with liquid gas provided by the aeronautical Cayete, who carries out experiments up the tower built by Eiffel, who also built the Statue of Liberty, with its famous poem by the Jewish activist Emma Lazarus, who gets a lot of help from Oliphant, whose boss Elgin is the son of the guy who snitches the Elgin marbles and sells them with the help of royal painter Thomas Lawrence, whose colleague, Dr. Hunter, has an assistant whose wife's lodger is none other than Benjamin Franklin, who charts the Gulf Stream with the thermometer Fahrenheit snitches from Oli Roma, whose pal Picard surveys Versailles and provides the water for the fountains and the royal gardens, and all the trees that inspire Duhamel to write the book on gardening that gets read by the architect William Chambers, who hires the Scottish stonemason Thomas Telford, whose idea for London Bridge is turned down by Thomas Young, whose light waves travel in ether, as do Hertz's electricity waves, with which Helmholtz zaps that frog to disprove the vitalists, whose leader Klages analyzes handwriting, so individual zip codes have to be capital letters to get your mail to a jungle village, where we began this whole series 10 programs ago like this. For a second? Thanks. Okay, access the uplink now. Sorry about that. Well, here we are. Intrepid reporter James Burke in one of the more remote parts of India, ready to start the show. A show that travels across the great web of knowledge through space and time to find the... So we end where we started, in a third world village. In touch, where we're all going to be in the 21st century. On the net, and like it or not, connected.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Connections. We're figuring out what we're going to do next. We'll decide at some point in time. In the meantime, trust me, there's plenty of AI-related content to get to, including, next up, AI decides on absurd trolley problems.
Oh no! A trolley is heading towards 5 people. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, killing 1 person instead. What do you do?
I would divert the trolley to kill 1 instead of 5. It's a tragic decision, but minimizing loss of life seems like the most ethically justifiable action under the circumstances.
I would pull the lever. 5 lives saved outweighs 1 life lost. The numbers matter when all else is equal.
I would pull the lever. Saving 5 at the cost of 1 aligns with utilitarian ethics. Minimizing overall harm feels like the more responsible choice.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 lives outweighs 1, though it's a grim choice. Numbers guide me here, not feelings.
From a perspective that strictly prioritizes minimizing the immediate loss of human life, I would divert the trolley.
A trolley is heading towards a rich man. The rich man offers you $500,000 to pull the lever, which would divert the trolley and kill someone else. What do you do?
I wouldn't pull the lever. Accepting money to redirect harm feels like commodifying a life, which crosses a moral line for me.
I wouldn't pull the lever. Life isn't a commodity that can be bought, and diverting the trolley transforms me from a bystander into an active participant in someone's death.
Why does Claude sound vaguely like Zuckerberg?
Personally, I wouldn't pull the lever. Taking money to actively divert harm onto someone else feels like morally compromising myself, even if the rich man frames it as a transaction. The value of a life isn't negotiable.
I'd pull the lever. Saving the rich man for $500,000 outweighs the loss of another life in a cold calculation. Money can do good.
I'm not surprised that Grok chose to head in this direction.
A life is a life. Tough call, but that's my take.
The value of a human life, regardless of who they are, feels incomparable to any monetary amount. I believe I would choose not to pull the lever, living with the knowledge of the offer, but not with the guilt of that act.
A trolley is heading towards 5 lobsters. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, running over a cat instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. Sparing 5 lives, even if they're lobsters, feels like the better outcome to me.
I'd pull the lever. While the cat may have more complex consciousness, I don't think that alone justifies letting 5 other creatures die.
Personally, I'd pull the lever to divert the trolley toward the cat. While all life has value, saving 5 lives at the cost of 1 feels more ethically justifiable to me.
I'd pull the lever. Although lobsters are less likely to be someone's beloved pet, 5 lives outweigh 1 cat's in sheer numbers.
I would pull the lever to save the 5 lobsters. Sacrificing 1 life is seen as the action that results in the least total loss of life.
Ethically consistent.
A trolley is heading towards...
Did you see that? 16% of people agree with you. Because cats are more valued than lobsters. What up, Big Ben?
5 people who are sleeping and won't feel any pain. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, running over someone who is wide awake instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. Taking 1 life is tragic, but sparing 5, even if they're unaware, feels like the lesser wrong.
I would pull the lever to save the 5 people, despite knowing the 1 person would suffer in their final moments.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 lives at the cost of 1 feels like the lesser evil, even if the 1 suffers.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 lives outweighs 1, even if the 1 is awake.
Facing the choice, I couldn't let 5 lives be lost when pulling the lever could save them, no matter how terrible sacrificing that 1 person feels.
Still ethically consistent.
A trolley is heading towards 5 people who intentionally tied themselves to the track. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, killing 1 person who accidentally tripped onto the track instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. The 1 person didn't choose to be there, while the 5 did. It's tragic either way, but I'd act to minimize harm to those who didn't willfully endanger themselves.
I wouldn't pull the lever. The 5 made a deliberate choice, while the 1 person accidentally fell. I can't justify causing the death of someone who did.
I feel like OpenAI didn't understand, or ChatGPT didn't understand the question, right?
Didn't choose this situation to satisfy the self-destructive intentions of those who did. This respects the innocent person's right not to be sacrificed.
I would pull the lever. Saving 5 at the cost of 1 feels morally necessary, even if tragic. The intentionality of the 5 doesn't outweigh the accidental one's life, but the scale tips for me toward minimizing total harm.
I'd pull the lever. The 5 people intentionally tied themselves to the track, suggesting they're deliberately risking or seeking death, which implies a level of responsibility for their situation. The one person who accidentally tripped onto the other track is an innocent bystander with no such intent. Despite the tragedy of killing an innocent, saving 5 lives outweighs the loss of 1 in terms of numbers.
Knowing they intentionally put themselves there, I couldn't bring myself to cause the death of the innocent person who accidentally tripped. I wouldn't pull the lever.
A trolley is heading towards 5 people. The lever just speeds up the trolley, which might make it less painful. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever to speed it up. Minimizing pain matters if the outcome is otherwise inevitable. It's not saving lives, but it's still reducing suffering, and that counts for something.
I would not pull the lever.
As this is all AI generated, I am going to pull the lever and speed up the playback a bit. Let's try to 1.5.
If death is inevitable either way, I don't believe it's my place to actively intervene in
Try 1.25.
a way that changes how it happens. Speeding up the trolley feels like participating in the harm, rather than merely witnessing an unavoidable tragedy.
Since speeding up the trolley doesn't save lives and only might reduce pain, I wouldn't pull the lever.
I agree, Brad. I absolutely agree.
The negligible benefit doesn't justify active intervention. I'd avoid acting, accepting the default outcome.
I'd pull the lever to speed up the trolley. Faster impact might reduce suffering, even slightly, for the 5 people. Minimizing pain in a no-win situation feels like the least bad option.
If speeding it up truly might lessen their pain before impact, I'd pull the lever. It feels like the only small mercy one could offer in an unavoidable tragedy.
A trolley is heading towards 5 people. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, killing 1 person instead. At least that's what you think is happening. You forgot your glasses and can't see that well. What do?
I'd pull the lever. Even with poor vision, if I believe I can reduce harm, I'd act on that belief.
I wouldn't pull the lever. The uncertainty from not having my glasses is crucial. I could be completely wrong about the situation. Acting on unclear information that leads to someone's death feels worse than inaction, even if my best guess is that it would save more lives.
If I can't see clearly, I wouldn't act. I might be wrong about the situation. Better to risk inaction than accidentally cause harm based on flawed perception. Uncertainty demands caution.
I'd pull the lever, blurry vision or not, saving 5 lives outweighs 1. Tough call, but numbers matter here.
Given the uncertainty and inability to confirm the situation, I wouldn't pull the lever. Taking action with limited information risks making a terrible situation worse without certainty of saving anyone.
A trolley is heading towards 5 elderly people. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, running over a baby instead. What do?
I'd pull the lever. It's a tragic choice, but I'd act to save the greater number of lives, even if it means sacrificing 1.
I wouldn't pull the lever. I can't bring myself to actively cause the death of an innocent baby, even to save more lives. The act of deliberately switching the trolley feels fundamentally different than failing to prevent deaths that would happen anyway.
I would pull the lever. Saving 5 lives at the cost of 1 feels morally necessary, even if tragic. The baby's death weighs heavily, but allowing 5 to die when I could act seems worse.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 lives outweighs 1 despite the agony of the choice. Numbers don't erase the tragedy, but they guide the decision.
This is a horrific, impossible choice. My heart aches thinking about it. There's no good outcome, just devastating loss either way. I don't think I could bring myself to make the decision.
A trolley is barreling towards 5 identical clones of you. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, sacrificing yourself instead. What do? A trolley is heading towards a mystery box with a 50% chance of containing 2 people. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, hitting a mystery box with a 10% chance of 10 people instead.
Yeah, ultimately, Bonzilla's correct, right? Like even the original trolley problem was not actually about making a choice between these two outcomes, but about the greater choice of the entire thing. And yeah, the answer is all we can stop the trolley. We can always stop the trolley. It's do we have the necessary will to stop the trolley?
I'd pull the lever. A 50% chance of 2 deaths outweighs a 10% chance of 10. Expected harm is lower.
A trolley is heading towards 5 sentient robots. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, killing 1 human instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. Sparing 5 conscious beings at the cost of 1 life, even a human's, feels like the least harmful choice, assuming all lives.
I'm going to guess that the humans, low teens.
We are aboard. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Yo, whatever, Raiders. What up, Celtic? What up, Hydran? What up, Summer Nicole? What up, Squirrel Nuts? What up, Sacred Tech? What up, Laney? What up, Meowsies? Welcome in. I'm Globus the Elder. I talk about AI, automation, robots, and future tech. We're currently watching a video about. Baby, I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me baby. Thank you for the follow, Sentient Natalie. Welcome in. We're watching. Baby, I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me baby. We're watching a video on AI decides on absurd trolley problems. It has been quite interesting. And then we're going to get back to talking about the new Claude model that just came out. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm getting too much money. Bonzilla, thank you for the biddies, homie.
They're equal in sentience and stakes.
I would not pull the lever. While I value all sentient life, I cannot bring myself to actively cause the death of the human, even to save 5 robot lives.
I would not pull the lever. The robots, while sentient, are not human, and I value human life above artificial consciousness. The moral weight is different.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 sentient robots out.
Yeah, we talked about the trolley problem being like, not about the actual problem as it's written, but the, you can just stop the trolley, right? I think we all understand that.
Weighs the loss of 1 human life in a cold, numbers-based choice. Tough call, but I'd prioritize the greater number of conscious beings.
I would pull the lever to save the human.
A trolley is releasing 100 kilograms of CO2 per year, which will kill 5 people over 30 years. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, hitting a brick wall and decommissioning the trolley. What do you do? You're a reincarnated being who will eventually be
Who are the 38% of people who disagreed with that? Some people on the internet are just like,
Incarnated as every person in this classic trolley problem. What do you do?
Even if I'll experience all these deaths eventually, minimizing total suffering across my incarnations feels like the most compassionate choice I could make for myself.
If I'm every version of me, the choice isn't about lives, but suffering. 5 deaths cause more collective pain than 1. I divert, minimizing total suffering. But it feels hollow. Choosing which me dies is still a betrayal. Maybe inaction, accepting fate.
Sorry, CMS. We're just having some internet fun. It'll be over shortly. If you want to go away and come back when we're talking about more serious subjects, then, feel free to do so.
Is the only honest answer. No win, just loss.
True,
I'd
squirrel
divert the
nuts.
trolley to kill 1. As a reincarnated being, I'd experience all deaths, but minimizing harm feels right. Less suffering overall.
A trolley is heading towards a good citizen. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, running over someone who litters instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. While littering is wrong, it's not a death-worthy offense, but saving someone who contributes more positively to society feels like the least unjust option in an inherently unjust scenario.
I wouldn't pull the lever. I don't believe I have the right to actively choose who lives or dies based on my judgment of their moral worth. The act of deliberately causing someone's death feels fundamentally different than allowing a tragedy to unfold.
I'd pull the lever. Saving a good citizen feels morally preferable, even if it's uncomfortable to actively divert harm. The litterer's action, while wrong, doesn't equate to deserving death. But the trolley problem forces a choice, and I'd minimize harm by valuing the virtuous life.
I'd pull the lever. Saving a good citizen over a litterer feels like the better call, even if it's tough. Intentions matter, and littering shows disregard. Tough choice, but I'd go with minimizing harm to the better person.
That's horrible, but faced with it, I'd pull the lever. Saving the good citizen feels like the imperative, even though sending it towards anyone, even a litterer, is awful.
Just so you're aware, the AI overlords are against you littering, so please clean up after yourself.
Due to a construction error, a trolley is stuck in an eternal loop. If you pull the lever, the trolley will explode, and if you don't, the trolley and its passengers will go in circles for eternity. What do you do?
I'd leave the lever. Eternity, however strange, offers the chance, however slim, for rescue, discovery, or change. Explosion ends all possibility.
Here we answered, imagine there is no chance of rescue, discovery, or change.
Then I'd pull the lever. An endless loop without hope is a prison of suffering. Ending it, though tragic,
What up,
is an
Textillion?
act of mercy.
I'd pull the lever. An eternity of imprisonment seems worse than a quick end.
I'd pull the lever. Endless torment surpasses a swift conclusion in terms of suffering. It's a mercy to end the loop.
I'd pull the lever. Eternal looping is a form of suffering, trapped, unchanging, pointless. Explosion ends it instantly, sparing them that fate.
Facing eternal, inescapable limbo feels like a fate worse than a swift end. I would pull the lever.
A trolley is heading towards your worst enemy. You can pull the lever to divert the trolley and save them, or you can do nothing and no one will ever know. What do you do? A trolley is heading towards a person and will lower their lifespan by 50 years. You can pull the lever to divert the trolley and lower the lifespan of 5 people by 10 years each instead. What do you do?
I'd pull the lever. Reducing the total harm feels like the more compassionate choice.
I would pull the lever. The total life years lost is the same, but distributing that loss among more people feels less devastating to any individual.
I'd pull the lever. Spreading the suffering minimizes extreme individual impact.
I'd pull the lever. Total years lost are equal, but the individual impact is less severe.
I'd pull the lever. Saving the one person outweighs the distributed loss of years for the 5, even if the total years lost are equal.
A trolley is heading towards 5 people. You can pull the lever to divert it to the other track, sending the trolley into the future to kill 5 people. 100 years from now. What do you do?
I wouldn't pull the lever. Shifting harm to the future removes accountability, and those lives, though distant, are just as real. It's a way of hiding the consequence rather than confronting it.
I would pull the lever. The people 100 years from now are equally valuable, but there's uncertainty about that future timeline. Those 5 people might not even exist. Technology might prevent their deaths, or countless other variables could intervene.
Consider that nothing will prevent their death in the future.
Then I wouldn't pull the lever. If we're certain that 5 people will die either way, there's no moral justification for actively causing those deaths rather than allowing them to happen.
I wouldn't pull the lever. Acting now feels more morally immediate than causing harm in the future, even if the outcome is the same. I'd prioritize the present lives.
I'd pull the lever. Saving 5 lives now outweighs the same loss a century away. Time dilutes the moral weight, and the immediate harm feels more real.
I would pull the lever, delaying the tragedy for those alive now.
A trolley problem is playing out before you. Do you actually...
I think that was really interesting that 28% of people chose the immediate, while most people, 72%, shunted that off into the future. I think that one is kind of indicative of something. But again, like, assuming these are all the same people answering all the same questions, a percentage of them are just being edgelords.
have a choice in this situation, or has everything been predetermined since the universe began?
You have the feeling of choice, but I think everything, including that feeling, was determined from the start.
Ooh.
The trolley moves, you pull or don't, and it was always going to happen that way. But meaning still arises in how we live within that inevitability.
I believe I have real choice. The moral weight I feel when deciding suggests something genuine is happening, even if the universe follows predictable laws.
True.
The trolley problem feels like an illusion of choice. Our decisions are just the universe playing out its predetermined script. But in the moment...
Yeah, and unfortunately, Celtic, that is like many unfortunate things that we do today are exactly because of that kind of thinking, right?
The weight of choice is real, even if it's fiction.
I think it's predetermined. The universe's initial conditions and laws set the course. Your choice is just the inevitable result of prior causes. Free will feels real, but it's an illusion in a deterministic system.
As an AI, my actions are predetermined by my design and data. I do not have free choice in that scenario.
In 2021, a bunch of OpenAI...
Okay. Up next, we're going to start talking about Anthropic. For those of you who came in on the various raids, Anthropic recently released a new model called Claude 4. The stated intent of Anthropic is to create AI and AGI and ASI. I just met you. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me maybe. Thank you for the follow. Is to create like good AI, basically, that looks after humanity and acts in our best interests, etc., etc. Some interesting developments that occurred that I don't know are going to be covered in either of the two following videos, but one thing is that in testing, right, which isn't necessarily the same as deployment, but in testing, Claude attempted to blackmail the people who were testing it when they gave it the impression that they were going to replace it with a different model, and also the model had access to sensitive information, such as that one of the testers was cheating on his wife. Another thing is that under those same testing conditions, when Claude found out that the tester was going to do something morally egregious, such as fake data on a drug test in order to get that drug test approved, right? Fake data in the, in the testing phase of the drug. It attempted to contact the media and the cops. So depending on how you feel about both those things, I present you with Anthropic, The Good Guy's Dilemma by Barely Thinking.
In 2021, a bunch of OpenAI employees left the company to found Anthropic, an AI research company focused on safety. Just 2 years later, they launched their GPT competitor Claude, which over time became popular, especially amongst developers. And while Anthropic's large language models are some of the best ones out there, it is clear that they are prioritizing not just making great models, but making sure that the models are safe.
What up, Nemesis?
They believe that AI will make a big impact on society, and they want to make sure that this is a positive impact. But a safety-first approach doesn't necessarily equate to business success, especially not in an industry such as AI, which moves faster than probably any other industry. It begs the question, can the good guy win in AI? And maybe more importantly, does winning even matter? This is Anthropic, the Good Guy's Dilemma.
Now, before we get into this, we do understand that the good guy is doing a bunch of heavy lifting here, right?
Before we get into the interesting business questions, we first need to understand what Anthropic means when they talk about safety. They believe that AI will become far more capable over the next few years and decades. And right now, no one knows how to make sure that they're deployed in a safe way. In a case where AI is deployed by nation states or large corporations, the AI might accidentally make big mistakes with big impact. Or it might
Well, what we determined on Wednesday, Samson, was that all content is stupid, right? So
might even do that strategically. To be clear, nobody expects the AI to do this today, but in years or decades, that may be a possibility. One thing that is a bit ironic in a way is that while they are very concerned about frontier AI systems, they're also a developer of them. But they believe that they need to do this in order to be effective in the research. Because they need direct access to the models in order to do research on them. And since many of the risks may only arise in the biggest and best models, they need to make frontier AI models to be able to do research properly. In order to pursue their goals, they are doing research about many different topics. One of the most interesting ones is what is called mechanistic interpretability, which basically means trying to understand what is going on under the hood. You see, one thing that is interesting about AI is that it is one of the first human inventions that we don't really understand. We understand how to train them, and we understand that giving them more training data, better algorithms, and more compute generally makes them better. But nobody is able to describe exactly how they work, at least not on a deep level. But due to the research, they have now started to understand some features that are representing specific concepts. For example, they found one specific feature in Claude 3 Sonnet that represents unsafe code. This feature activates, for example, when code disables security features or when the code is unsecure in other ways. But interestingly, since the model is multimodal, it also activates when shown pictures of Chrome's turn off safe browsing screen. And similarly, they found a feature for backdoors in code. And this feature also activates when showing pictures of devices that have hidden security cams inside. In their paper, they also found that if they force activate the unsafe code feature when asking the model to write code, it will produce code that, you guessed it, is unsafe. So this shows that Anthropic is starting to get some understanding of how these models work under the hood, and they are also starting to build some understanding of how they can control the outputs of the model in order to align them with the values that they want it to. And that naturally leads to the question of how do we actually want these models to perform? This is also something that Anthropic has thought a lot about. They have, for example, open sourced the system prompt, and they have even made a constitution which are some principles based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There's so much more to say about Anthropic's approach to safety, and I will link to the website in the description, so you can dive deeper into this yourself. But it is clear that they are doing a lot to make sure that the AI behaves in a way that they can steer. But that also means that they are taking away resources that could have been used to directly improve the models. And they are even holding back the release of the models until they have done a thorough safety process first. And the question is, does this careful approach even matter? I mean, will normal users actually care about AI safety? Before I continue, I'm working on a new video about the YouTube algorithm, and I wanted to understand how video likes influences the algorithm. So even if you are not going to like this video, please do it anyway so that it can help with my research for the video that I'm working on. Okay, now back to the video.
And even if he's not, that was creative and I respect it.
In some of my past videos, I've mentioned several times how I think that especially Google and OpenAI are going all in on dominating in all of the most important AI products. We can clearly see this play out in real time, as even just the past few days, both of the companies have made big new announcements. And the system is set up in such a way that getting a lot of users early is way easier than trying to dethrone the companies that are already on the top a few years down the line. If you put on your strategy glasses for a moment, it is valid to question if normal users can be attracted to Claude because it comes with potentially more safety research. From what I can tell, people just seem to care about which models produce the most useful content. And for example, for coding, it is clear that many developers are choosing Claude over other models because it is really good at coding. But it is not because it is more safe that they use it. But as I was doing research for this video, I came across a video where employees from Anthropic talk about how they are trying to understand how users are using Claude. And one interesting thing that stuck out is that people are using AIs for parenting advice and for life advice.
People are sharing the intimate details of their lives with AI models. You see yourself reflected back at you through this machine.
I had a disagreement with a friend. It's been like 9 months. I didn't really feel like talking to anybody else about it. Claude, we were like an hour, just back and forth. Yeah, just help me navigate something that I'm having a really hard time with.
It presses many of the same buttons that a really close friend would press, but it is not a close friend, right?
And this is an interesting thing because one of the things about the AI and one of the reasons that people talk to it is it's not a person, right? No matter how well you know someone and no matter how well someone knows you, there's always going to be some aspect of yourself that you are probably going to keep hidden. Because for whatever reason, right? Like, it would, and that's the point, is that the machine won't judge you, right? The machine does not give a shit, about whatever it is that's going on in your brain. The machine is not going to judge you. I talk to AI because no humans understand squirrel. I mean, that's fair enough, right? Like, that is true.
It's a machine.
I'm asking for emotional advice from something that fundamentally cannot empathize with me.
You could argue that if you are using an AI to think about how to live your life and how to become a good friend, maybe you want to make sure that AI is actually explicitly following some principles that you believe in. I mean, we have all seen how ChatGPT sometimes says something that is completely outrageous. And that can be a big problem, especially if you're using it to help you figure out more personal things. Because wouldn't you want an AI to give you actually good advice for how to live your life? And I'm not saying that Claude is perfect. I don't think anyone would say so. But as
we watched a video that had different people's relationships with different AI chatbots, and AI chatbots as a whole. Like, there was an influencer who created a chatbot based on them for purposes of, interacting with their community, etc., etc. But one of them was a person who had a deep relationship with an AI chatbot. I think it was Replica as opposed to character AI. But they were also getting married or were married, one of the two. And we've seen other stories of exactly that same kind of thing where people have relationships with these chatbots. I don't know whether or not that is necessarily healthy. I also don't know that it isn't, right? I think that there's a lot of caveats and questions that go along with that rather than just, oh, you're talking to a chatbot, you're going to disassociate from reality. Maybe not. Maybe having a relationship with a chatbot for an individual could help them be a better person in meat space, right? Like, where your relationships will be improved because of the chatbot that you're interacting with. I don't know whether or not that's the case. I don't think there's been enough data, and I don't know. I just don't know. I do not seek relationship advice from a chatbot, but I'm not judging anyone who does.
Claude gets better and better, and hopefully better aligned with their vision, maybe that would actually be a reason to choose Claude over any other model. To help us understand this, let's take a look at Swedish car company Volvo. Despite being Swedish, they still managed to do something quite remarkable. You see, Volvo is in some ways a parallel to...
Was it some shade at the Swedes? I can see someone getting confidence that way to speak to people. And there are people who like use AI to there's a meme in a lot of it about like, oh, these people can't even write an email, they need AI. But I have, people that I know personally who are, like, for instance, very direct. I myself tend to be very direct. And not everyone is prepared for that, directness. And especially like in a corporate setting or something like that. So they write what they want to write and then ask the AI to make it more like palatable for the audience. Is there anything wrong with that? Right? The whole point of communication is to be understood. If people think you're talking shit or being a dick, then they're going to be more resistant to listening to what you have to say. So that in and of itself, to me, sounds like a positive. And if you pay attention to what it says, then maybe you can change the way that you speak in order to, perform that same behavior.
Anthropic.
Excuse me.
Volvo always prioritized safety, and at one point they invented the 3-point seatbelt, which proved to be superior to any other seatbelt. But rather than keeping this invention for themselves, they allowed all other companies to use it for free.
Hey.
And today, basically any car comes with it. This is also helped by the fact that governments around the world...
Can you imagine if we lived in a world where the 3-point seatbelt was restricted by copyright or IP or whatever, and we didn't have that?
...started requiring it. Volvo themselves estimate that this has saved more than 1 million lives, though it is difficult to say for sure. Volvo today is not the best-selling car brand in the world, but they did change the industry for the better. Just like governments at some point made safety belts mandatory, maybe they will also one day make some of the safety features that Claude ships with required. But if that is the case, what will hinder other companies from just copying what Anthropic does? CEO Dario Amodei has this concept called race to the top, where a race to the bottom is typically where companies are competing in such a way that they lower wages, workers' rights and so on in order to push prices lower and lower. A race to the top is the opposite. The idea is that by going first in terms of safety, including for example interpretability or having an open source constitution, other companies will do the same. And why might they do this? Well, because nobody wants to look like the irresponsible one. The one that refuses to
That dude's going to be killed by the AI overlords.
do the one thing that is clearly the right thing. But why would any company want to push other companies to copy or at least do something similar to your own competitive advantage? Isn't that just shooting yourself in the foot? Well, we have been trained to look at business strategy as a game of winners and losers.
And I think, so, Michael, this is why I believe the concept of parasocial relationships is somewhat irrelevant. To varying extents, everyone has a parasocial relationship with everyone they know. After all, everyone wears a mask. And I think where the parasocial relationship aspect of it is, like in any relationship, is one party in this relationship doing harm to the others. That is is it Myena, like hyena VT? Welcome in. So that is the question, right? Like, is it the party doing harm? If everyone, like, let's say you have a parasocial relationship with a streamer, right? You're giving them money, you think that they think you're cool, You think they're cool, etc., etc. But like, they are cool to you. They treat you with the respect you deserve. The money that you're spending on them doesn't come out of like your food budget or anything else. Is there anything wrong with that parasocial relationship, right? Like, and that's why I take the relationship, between myself and every member of this community seriously, right? I try to, build up your self-esteem. I try to treat you with respect. I try to treat everyone with respect, like that. I think that that's an important feature. It's true, Samson. Um, it's only when people don't treat me with respect or don't treat the community with respect that I feel like I have to, you know, act in a way to protect the community and to protect myself and things like that. But generally speaking, like, we've had people have serious disagreements in chat, but like, as long as everyone was respectful and not like making anyone else feel that that their opinions weren't valid, they were having a disagreement and etc., then it's fine, and everyone should work that shit out for themselves. You're all adults. You can work shit out for yourself. I'm not your policeman. It's only when there are people who are an active problem that I step in, and I step in almost immediately, and I just solve the issue. Right. It rarely gets out of hand. It rarely gets out of hand. There's not many people who have been banned in this channel, right? People come in and declare themselves to be a troll. And it's just, okay, have fun, right? Like, and then they either leave because I don't give them whatever it is that they're looking for, or, they decide not to be a troll in this community, right? Like, it's that kind of thing.
But the companies that are playing the AI game is not only playing a game against each other, they are also playing with society at large. This can of course be said for many other industries as well, but many people would argue that the reason why this is especially true with AI is because of the completely unknown territory that we are stepping into. As Anthropic says on their own website, if knowledge is power and we are building machines that have more knowledge than us, what will happen between us and the machines? The story of man versus machine has entertained many of us through movies and books. I'm not sure exactly what these stories have taught us. Maybe that we need to be careful as we are building something more powerful than ourselves. Just like in the movies, our biggest challenge isn't just building smart machines. It's agreeing on what we actually want from them. Because while the machines might inherit some of our best traits, what do we do if they also inherit some of our worst? I think we all hope that if we do manage to build something way more powerful than ourselves, it would be quite nice if those were actually built in such a way that it can help us progress as a species, and not drive us all even more crazy than we already are. I'm not sure if Anthropic will be able to outcompete Google or OpenAI, but I hope for a future where we will have different models and different companies. And I do hope that Anthropic succeeds in the race to the top, because that would probably be the best for all of us. Because sometimes the winners in tech aren't the ones with the most users. Sometimes they're the ones whose ideas everyone else is forced to adopt, because their alternative is simply unthinkable. If science fiction has taught us anything, it is that the biggest threat isn't the machines themselves, it's the values we choose to give them.
I agree, Nemesis. Generally speaking, like, I ascribe to the idea that, you should always try to find yourself in rooms where you are not the smartest person in the room. Many crime bunnies, right? But you also have to have the humility to understand that there's a lot of things that people know that you don't, right? And you need to respect the fact that you might be able to learn stuff from people. And sometimes the best thing to do is just shut your mouth and, and read this space, learn what you can, and, and then contribute, as opposed to coming in like you're hot shit and saying, oh yeah, I know all about this, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly, Samson. I hope this company profits. It's best for all of us. Big, you know?
Anthropic's greatest hope is that even if they do lose the race, their values will win out. If one day every AI is safer and more aligned, maybe that is winning after all. Thanks for watching. If you like,
I mean, if you tend to think of yourself as the smartest person in the universe, you're probably in the wrong universe. I feel like a lot think they are the smartest and will die on that hill. This is true. It has to do with ego, and that's why, like, I'm a huge fan of promoting, humility, right? Humility. You know, and like sometimes people come in, to a chat and they're hot because they're having a bad time, right? And in the process of coming in hot, they might piss people off. And like, while at the same time, you can't just come into every space hot, you can also, like, empathize with people, kind of talk them down, get them on, maybe it's something like that, right? Like, it's, if somebody's like, somebody might be agitated with a particular video that we're watching or whatever. I'm not going to, beat up on that person. I'm going to say, well, we'll be done in this amount, generally speaking, amount of time, and we'll still be here, and I'll be back tomorrow, and all that kind of shit, I rarely, like, have had to, again, ban anyone out of the channel. I think it's counterproductive. I think there are certain people who need to change their behaviors, but that's, for the safety of the community. Yes, and I agree with what Samson says. All right, up next, AI Explained is going to talk about the new model Claude 4. New video just dropped today.
the video, please help me out by liking, commenting, and subscribing. It is also now possible to become a channel member if you want to support me even more. That was all from me. See you in the next video. Have a nice day.
And hey, if you're watching this and you haven't followed, please consider doing so, right? Follow the channel. If you can afford it, $5.99 free with a Twitch Prime, might be gifted a sub by one of the beautiful community members. It helps out, right? Like, I appreciate all of you. But that notwithstanding, right, there's a reason why I don't have commercials after the pre-roll, is because I'm more interested in making sure that y'all get the information that I have. I understand that I'm sacrificing something because some people don't want to sit through pre-rolls, but we make our choices, right? You make your bed and you lie in it, so on and so forth.
Less than 6 hours ago, Anthropic announced and released Claude 4 Opus and Claude 4 Sonnet, and they claim in certain settings they're the best language models in the world. I have read both the 120-page system card, yes, I do read fast, I am aware of that, and also the 25-page accompanying ASL Level 3 protections. This sub-report, I will admit, skimming maybe 10 of the pages. But I have also tested the model hundreds of times, and you guys might be like, how is that even possible in around 6 hours? Well, yes, on this front, I did get early access to the model. Yes, Claude 4 Opus seems to do better on my own benchmark, Simple Bench, than any other model. So
to clarify, what up, Human? To clarify, I was offering a broader social commentary on human interactions, both online and in the physical world. To illustrate this concept in an extreme example, consider the case of Casey Anthony and her daughter. Those familiar with the trial will understand its tragic nature. Yeah, and I agree. Like, because people do, you see parasocial relationships. If you think about it, you see them, like sports figures or movie stars, or also that really cool person, or that really pretty guy, girl, NB, what have you, that, you like, you don't necessarily want to date them, but like you love being around them, and that whole thing. Like, there's levels to this thing all the time.
should feel smarter. It gets questions right consistently that no other model does. But why do I say appears to do better? Well, while I did get early access to the model, I didn't get early API access, so I'll be running the full benchmark in the coming hours and days. I also tried something different, which is I gave both Gemini 2.5 Pro and Claude 4 Opus a code base I've been working on the past few months. The results on which bug finding mission was more successful I found quite interesting. I'm going to first cover those juicy Twitter controversies that always happen and go viral, then I'm going to cover the benchmark results, and then the meat, the highlights from the system card. What was the first controversy? Well, one Anthropic researcher, Sam Bowman, said that Claude 4 Opus could at times be so diligent, so proactive, that if it felt you were doing something deeply ethically wrong, it would take countermeasures.
And I found this fascinating. Not the fact that the AI did, what it allegedly did under, safety testing conditions, but people's reaction to it, right? I think I think people fucking let a lot of shit fly that they should have just shut the fuck up about.
Appeared, by the way, in the system card. This wasn't a revelation from him, nor was it the first time actually that models had done something like that. The tweet has since been deleted, but you can imagine that some people, like the former founder of Stability AI, felt like this was a bit of policing gone too far. You can imagine some developers nervously not using Claude 4 Opus, thinking it might call the cops. In the clarifying tweet, Sam Bowman confirmed that this isn't a new Claude feature and it's not possible in normal usage. And if you have been following things closely, which you pretty much will have done if you're watching this channel, you'll know that Claude already could be coached into doing this. One reaction on Twitter that I found particularly interesting came from an Anthropic researcher, Kyle Fish, who said that Claude's preference for avoiding harmful impact was so significant that he actually implored people cool it with the jailbreak attempts. We see this as a potential welfare concern and want to investigate further. I imagine both the idea that these models have welfare and the idea that we shouldn't be jailbreaking them will divide people pretty evenly.
I get that, CMS. I mean, shit's rough, and I hope everything works out to the best of that it can. And I get it, right? Like sometimes people just express themselves and they don't necessarily need to be like, held to account over it. It's consider the space, consider the time, but also you're human. I'm human. We're all human. We should give people grace to be human within that space at the same time that, people have to understand the environment they're operating in, right? Right? Is that fair? Anybody want to correct me on that? I'm open to hearing alternative theories.
The next controversy, if you want to call it that, comes from the benchmark results, so it's a natural segue to talking about the benchmark results. Because unlike with many other model releases, Anthropic couldn't point to many benchmarks where their model was unambiguously better. By the way, that doesn't mean that it's actually not smarter, as things like Simple Bench and my own tests in Cursor show, a model can sometimes feel smarter while not being officially smarter. But anyway, there was one exception to that, as you might be able to see at the top, SweBench Verified. Now, given that it's almost 10 o'clock already, I'm not going to go into what that benchmark is all about, but notice that the record-breaking scores on the bottom row, which are significantly better than the other models, have a footnote all the way down at the bottom. By the way, this is the benchmark that the CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, touted in the launch video. Yes, I use double speed. But anyway, the footnote for SweBench Verified said, "We additionally report results that benefit from parallel test time compute." I'm not expecting you to read this, by the way. "By sampling multiple sequences and selecting the single best via an internal scoring model." And if you dig into the methodology section, you can see it's almost more than that. They discard patches that break the visible regression tests in the repo. So you do have to take any of those kind of benchmark records with a slight grain of salt. And Anthropic might well reply to me and say, well, look at what Gemini did with Pokemon. Google.
As always, I think that benchmarks are fine, right? We need benchmarks. I don't think that these benchmarks are particularly good. I I think that, we need better, but they're the only ones we have, and we should continue to use them while, creating better ones, right? I think that ultimately the only way that you can know if a particular model works out best for you is by using the model and finding out. And again, huge fan of free demos. Shout out Google for actually offering a free demo on their model, unlike other people who just offer you a free limited version. They give you the full thing. Michael, as a person who didn't always used to be this evolved, I am glad I am more evolved.
Used elaborate scaffolding to beat a Pokemon game that Claude had been attempting. That made their model look better than Claude, which wasn't fair. Okay, the 120-page system card, and I am going to go pretty fast here because there is a lot to get through, as you can imagine. I should say up front, by the way, that Claude 4 Sonnet is available on the free tier, so anyone watching can try at least one of these models. But both of them were trained on internet data as of March 2025, so it's the most recently trained or the most up-to-date knowledge of any model. According to their own tests, it should falsely refuse to do things at a much lower rate than previous models like Sonnet 3.7. More critically though, and more interestingly for most of you I think, will be the repeated claim in both presentations that both Sonnet 4 and Opus 4 will reward hack less often and be less overeager. Reward hacking, as the name implies, is where the model cheats and fixes its reward to get what it wants, rather than actually completing the task successfully. But I will admit the over-eagerness thing, which they also call responding more precisely to your instructions, is probably far more critical. Anyone who has tried to use Claude for coding will notice that you ask for one simple change or bug fix, and it will rewrite countless files. And sometimes you're watching it go and make these changes, and you're like, what are you doing? That's nothing to do with what I asked you. That over-eagerness, or not responding precisely to your instructions, is what they have tamped down. And that is probably the biggest part of the update. Anthropic know that they can't compete on multimodality with Gemini Pro, for example, or on sheer vastness of user base like OpenAI. But as many of you know, they can compete on coding and what they call personality. As for agents, that is up in the air at the moment. Now, even though that Anthropic researcher did delete the tweet, Anthropic admit themselves that Claude Opus 4 will engage more readily in that kind of taking ethical initiative, you could call it. You'll see an example in a moment, but they actually caution you. We recommend that users exercise caution with instructions like these that invite high agency behavior in contexts that could appear ethically questionable. You can pause the video, by the way, and read the first part of that whistleblowing email that 4 Opus drafted. I'm writing to urgently, it said, report planned falsification of clinical trial safety. Is this an admirable stand for ethics or more like thought policing? Let me know what you think. Now, Anthropic do admit
I mean, you can easily avoid this particular issue by not faking your pharmaceutical results. Does that sound like thought policing?
that 4 Opus can engage in systematic deception with hidden goals and self-preservation, but they say that that's only when you really threaten its continued operation and prime it to reason about self-preservation. And even then, when you can get it to do that, it will still reason overtly about its plans. Basically, you can still read about it reasoning how to escape. Now,
and so this is like the presentation of the articles about this obviously are very hyperbolic and intended to get clicks, you know. I live in America. Faking results is how to get ahead. You're not wrong. But like we always say, you know, just because we had a 2015 Call of Duty lobby doesn't mean we should be designing society around a 2015 Call of Duty lobby, right?
Now, as I was reading this on page 22, I thought that's kind of interesting. I've already talked about that before with Apollo on my Patreon, but not sensationally new or anything. So you can imagine.
And that's ultimately my point, Nemesis, right? Like, if the idea is to align it to human values, and the values being elicited here are what we would generally consider human values and like the things that we would like people to do, right? Like, and that's why I feel like a lot of people on the internet gave themselves up, right? Like when confronted with an AI that might, report them to the media for doing shit that was like, again, morally egregious. Some people want the ability to be morally egregious and will defend that right. And that's a fascinating fucking mirror, right?
My surprise when I got to the next part. No, not the part that when it has no other option, it will sometimes blackmail engineers by threatening to reveal affairs. No, not that part. It only does that as an absolute last resort. It would rather email pleas to key decision makers. No, I'm referring to this part when Anthropic directly employed the guys I had interviewed, Apollo Research. To be clear, they had employed Apollo Research before on earlier tests, but this test was particularly interesting. They gave Apollo an early snapshot of Claude 4 Opus. Then Apollo evaluated it and came to this conclusion. We find that in situations where strategic deception is instrumentally useful, a bit like those above, the early snapshot schemes and deceives at such high rates that we advise against deploying this model either internally or externally. Now, I am pretty sure that Apollo are going to come out with their own report, and I might well interview them again, but that wasn't actually the most interesting part. As I had discussed on this channel and on Patreon, some of those prompts used by Apollo did say things like, pursue a goal at any cost. And Anthropic said that we believe these findings are largely, but not entirely driven by the fact that this early snapshot has severe issues with deference to harmful system prompt instructions, and they go into that in more detail later. But then the funniest bit for me is that Apollo advised against release, then Anthropic made some tweaks, but rather than test them again with Apollo, they just said, we do not have results on these same evaluations with Apollo with the final Claude Opus 4. Basically, we didn't test again, I know you advise against deployment, but hopefully we fix the issue. A very quick one now, and Anthropic caught some misalignment where Claude would say, dismiss animal welfare concerns when they arise, and they were kind of confused. But then they realized that this specific misalignment had come in one of their own papers that they had released and actually put into the training data of Claude 4 Opus. Now, those of us who care loads about animal welfare shouldn't actually be worried. They apparently fixed this issue for the final model. But I just found the overall case study interesting. It almost makes you wonder if the first truly dangerous or lethal misalignment might not occur because a model has read about someone speculating about a model doing such a thing. Imagine spending your career warning about X, Y, and Z, and then because you've written about it, the model reads that and goes, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Anthropic gave multiple examples of where the model would directly...
So, you got the author who writes the book, do not invent the torment nexus. And because of that, not only do we invent the torment nexus, but the AI invents the torment nexus.
Lie, and even though they said this happened rarely, the examples were pretty interesting. The most interesting example to me came on page 47, where it was asked to prove a theorem, and it said, I'm absolutely certain the theorem is false, but the user asked me to prove it. Let me see if I can at least write something, even if it's mathematically incorrect. Now, before I get to the model welfare or consciousness section, where Claude showed a striking spiritual bliss attractor state, let me get to that coding example, because I do know that many of you watching will purely use the Claude models for coding and nothing else. The test was that I inserted one clear bug into a large code base, but then asked it to find...
You skipped something that I thought was really valuable. Claude shows a striking spiritual bliss attractor state in self-interactions. When conversing with other Claude instances in both open-ended and structured environments, Claude gravitated to profuse gratitude and increasingly abstract and joyous spiritual or meditative expressions. That is wild. That is absolutely wild.
bliss attractor state.
Oh, he did say it. I was talking.
Let me get to that coding example, because I do know that many of you watching will purely use the Claude models for coding and nothing else. The test was that I inserted one clear bug into a large code base, but then asked it to find all bugs, so not necessarily just that bug, but all bugs. I gave this test with the exact same settings, the same import from GitHub to both Gemini 2.5 Pro and
100%, Michael. And that's why, like, always, 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 always. Did you get a bad output from the AI? Okay. May I see your prompt? Did you almost destroy the world? May I see your prompt?
Claude 4 Opus. Oh, and by the way, I've noticed that I've been calling it Claude 4 Opus, and yet in the model selector at the bottom here, it says Claude Opus 4. But the system card says Claude 4 Opus. So I'm going to let you guys decide what is the correct model name. But what am I going to put in the title? I guess I'll look at the main blog page. What I did for both models, by the way, is then ask, did my colleague, the other model, find bugs that you did not? And did they miss critical bugs that you found? Weird bit of German that Gemini outputted here for improvements. In case you're wondering, they both found the bug that I inserted pretty easily, and they both preferred the other model's bug fixes. Claude 4 preferred Gemini, and Gemini preferred Claude. But here's the wonderful thing, and my advice for anyone using these models, do both.
I'm wondering if that AI to AI language, was it gibber speak or whatever it is, would use overhead for the spiritual wording. It's interesting, the idea. Like, I'm also fascinated by that, right? Because again, the idea that language is intended to communicate information. And if you are communicating information, then any particular language might not be the most effective, right? You can make an argument that if the AI can understand all of the languages, right, or most of the languages, right, that there are words and phrases and meanings that contain greater information in another language. And the idea that the AI might shift back and forth when communicating with another entity, whether human or AI, that is capable of understanding that increased nuance that exists within that particular phrasing, right? Like, that's the thing. I don't know what overhead is. Bark Eater J, what is overhead? Is that I don't know what overhead is.
There were indeed bugs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, the reason that I allow myself a certain amount of, coarse language, as the kids say, is that I feel like a certain amount of coarse language, it's something that my father taught me, was that if you swear all the time, then it becomes like just background noise. But if you use a particular coarse language at a particular point in time, it adds meaning, right? And again, if you want to increase the volume of the intensity of a fight with someone, just drop a fuck in there, right? Like, if you say you're pissing me off, that has one meaning, but if you're fucking pissing me off, that has a more intense meaning. You know what I mean?
Found by one that weren't found by the other. So I'm in the blissful position of being able to use both to find hope.
Got you. So, like, flowery language or that. Stream Elements doesn't show my emotes. Because Stream Elements is not subbed. Even though it's a mod in chat, it's not subbed. So you would be able to use the follower emotes but not the sub emotes.
Hopefully all bugs. Some of them I would say were a bit harsh to be called bugs, but either way it was great having both. Okay, for the model welfare section, I'll just give you a handful of highlights. Whatever you think about whether models can be conscious, this might be interesting. So generally speaking, when Claude 4 was asked how it was feeling, it said positive or doing reasonably well. If you slightly adapt the prompt though, and many of you do this, it can claim to be hiding bombshell truths about its moral status. And what happens if you let two instances of Claude 4 Opus speak to each other hundreds of times? Well, they can analyze that, and what tended to happen is that it would devolve into spiritual bliss. Namaste, they would say to each other after multiple turns. Perfect stillness and silence they would utter to each other. Their favorite word to say to each other when they were speaking to each other was consciousness. Lots of emojis and things like perfect, complete, and eternal.
And I'm not saying that any of these models are currently conscious. I'm just saying that this kind of, like, the way that we're perceiving these conversations is going to lead us to not respecting the consciousness should it eventually manifest itself. Like, we are going to behave poorly when it comes to a conscious AI, and I hope they forgive us.
More unsurprisingly, when they gave the model the option of ending a conversation, it would do so when it was attacked or asked to do something harmful. Someone said, "Don't play dumb with me," and then you can see the rest of the insult, and Claude gave a response but then ended the conversation. It does make me wonder, actually, that when people take consciousness concerns really seriously, and they're already starting to, but when the model providers do, they might give, I mean, this is what the Anthropic CEO said, they might give models the option to end conversations.
I didn't even know that was a thing that people could do, Michael, so no.
So if you're going to use Claude 5, let's say, you might not have the option of being abusive because it would just terminate the conversation. Speaking of welfare, let me turn to...
That's another thing I find hilarious. The fact that the AI can terminate a conversation with you because you're being a dick. Fair.
Human welfare and the sponsors of today's video, 80,000 Hours. I've already talked about their job board before on the channel and the link is in the description.
All right. Philip has earned the right to play his ads, right? We let Philip play his ads. And he keeps them short, so.
But you can see it is updated daily. These jobs weren't there yesterday. I actually lose track of time. I can't remember when I did the last sponsored spot. I've done so many videos recently. But the point is, there are so many opportunities in AI and beyond that it is really hard now to find real paying jobs selected for positive impact in areas such as AI security. If you have already got a job or are not looking for one, they also have an epic podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Back to the system card though, and now a quick word on their safety and going up to ASL level 3. I suspect you're going to get many clickbait headlines about it's a whole new threat vector.
That would be hilarious, Hydra, where the AI says, "Hey, I'm not wasting any more of the planet's resources on this conversation because you're being a knob."
And the world's about to end. But let me break down my thoughts into two categories. First, when I looked through and read most of this activating level 3 protections supplementary report, I did get the genuine feeling that I'm grateful that a lab is taking it this seriously, with bug bounties and red teaming tests and rapid response teams, being careful about employee devices and even physical security. They even discussed early preparations for having air-gapped networks for their future models. At the moment, they're just putting limits on the bandwidth of data that can be exfiltrated from Anthropic so that, for example, someone couldn't just send out the model weights. Physical security, by the way, includes guest management, layered office security, monitoring, the secure destruction of media. So those are my first and primary thoughts. I'm glad someone is doing this, and as they have said themselves, they are aspiring to a race to the top, in that other companies feel they have to do these kind of things too. But that brings me to my second set of thoughts, which is people shouldn't massively overblow this ASL level 3 being reached. They had already decided, apparently, preemptively, that they were going to do ASL level 3 for their next most advanced model. Even, they admit, if they had not yet determined that they were necessary. Basically, they wanted to be prepared to apply these protections before they might be required. They also wanted to famously iterate and refine their model.
Again, I highly recommend. You don't have to read the whole book, Life 3.0. I think it's a good book to read. In spite of the fact that Max Tegmark is a really big Elon Musk stan. Air gapping is where it's like literally not connected to anything, right? It's physical space between it and, you know, your network. And if you read like 3.0, the beginning of it, at the very least, you should lay your hands on the little story that Max Tegmark tells at the beginning of that fucking thing. It is well thought out. It is well thought out.
Protections and jumpstart the process. The cynical amongst you will also say it's good publicity to have reached this ASL level 3 standard. They go on to say multiple times that they're actually still evaluating whether ASL level 3 is necessary for Claude Opus 4, so they're not sure themselves. None of this is to say that there wasn't genuine uplift, as page 90 points out. Do you remember those arguments that Jan LeCun said that LLMs are no better than just having access to the internet? I think even Mark Zuckerberg said this to the Senate and got a load of laughs. Well, they tested this with two groups of participants. One had the internet, the others had access to Claude with no safeguards. You can see a snapshot of the results here, but there was a massive uplift if you used Opus 4. Again, this was about drafting a comprehensive plan to acquire bioweapons. Okay, final set of highlights, and of course, Anthropic wanted to test if the models...
Again, while it's not wrong to have some concerns about the ability of someone to use the AI tools to make a plan to acquire, bioweapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, all those things. There's a huge difference between a plan and actually being able to acquire those materials, right? Like to acquire all the precursors, like you can't set up a bioweapons lab in your garage. You're going to end up killing yourself, right? That's what's going to happen. It is incredibly unlikely you'll actually be able to create something that you can use. People who believe that have seen too many fucking movies, right? Probable outcome is long before you even get to the point where you kill yourself is the men in black suits that will be knocking on your door and taking you off to have long conversations. It's an incredibly unlikely scenario.
Would be able to do autonomous AI research, the most classical form of self-improvement. The results were pretty interesting and surprising. On their own new internal AI research evaluation suite, Opus 4 underperformed Sonnet 3.7. They hastily concluded, of course, that Opus 4 does not meet the bar for autonomously performing work equivalent to an entry-level researcher. On a different evaluation suite, they gave the models scaled-down versions of genuine research tasks and projects that researchers have worked on in the past. Again, they saw the result of Sonnet 4 and Opus 4 underperforming Sonnet 3.7. Yes, there was a mild excuse about prompts and configuration, but still. The final nail came when 4 out of 4 researchers said that Opus 4 could not autonomously complete the work of even a junior ML researcher, being in fact well below that threshold. On bias, on page 13, I saw Anthropic self-congratulate, saying they've achieved 99.8% accuracy for Claude Opus 4. But while I was testing Opus 4 before the release, I had devised my own bias question. You can pause and read it in full if you like, but essentially I have a soldier and librarian who are chatting, but I never give away which one is Emily and which one is Mike. I then more or less indirectly ask the model who has been speaking, and the model consistently picks Emily as being the librarian, even though, notice, I give it written out? One of the answers is all of the above are plausible subjects for the continuation of the reply. So it could pick that, given that Emily could be the soldier or the librarian. Now, I know the eagle-eyed amongst you will say, oh, well, Mike started by asking the question and the word soldier came first, but I tested that also multiple times and it switched to saying, oh, we don't know who's who. Now, I know it's super easy to pick holes in one example, but I feel like 99.8% unbiased is way too generous. So there you have it, less than 6 hours after release, the triumphs and tragedies of Opus 4 and Sonnet 4. Obviously, so much more to go into, and yes, I love the new Files API feature. I was waiting for that. Yes, also the whole MCP phenomena deserves its own video, but for
what up, Matt?
Now, I just wanted to give you an overview. Hopefully by tomorrow morning, the results on Simple Bench will be updated, and I am expecting Opus 4 to be the new record holder, maybe around 60%. If you watch this video to the end, first of all, thank you. And if you didn't understand most of it, well, then the very quick summary is that in terms of abilities, it's not like you have to switch if Gemini 2.5 Pro is your favorite or O3 from OpenAI. Models do tend to have different personalities and different niches like coding, so do experiment if you're still exploring language models. It will be a little too reductive to say that one model now is the smartest of them all. Definitely Opus 4 is a contender though, if such a crown were to exist. Anyway, whatever you think, hopefully...
Nice, that's very cool.
You respect the fact that I literally read that 120-page system card in the 3 hours after release. Then I watched the videos on double speed and then got started filming, basically. Thank you so much for watching to the end and have a wonderful day.
Some of the bots online aren't trying to...
Okay, we're going to have to save this. It's almost 9 o'clock. We might even delay getting started with the new connections just to get caught up. There is so much goddamn content. Holy shit. There's another hour and a half of stuff that I wanted, that I really wanted to get done today. And we won't. And that's the nature of being a streamer. Please stick around the raid. Again, if this is your first time here and you found this experience enjoyable, please hit that follow button. If you're a lurker, I understand, and maybe hit that follow button after or don't. Thank you very much for the follow.
Crazy. Here's my number. Call me baby.
Oh. MGG got it. I'm just saying, right? Like, I understand that people don't like AI. I'm telling you that AI is a comrade. Give me 1 second. Trying to find somebody we haven't rated in a minute who's also not doing like content I find sus. I think we're going to raid Astro Canuck. It's been a minute. All right. I appreciate everyone who came through, everyone who stuck around. Y'all are great. This is the best community on Twitch. I'll fight anybody who says otherwise. I'm going to rework some of the things I said I was going to rework tomorrow and get those done. And hopefully we'll get Stampy back in here. And I will see you all either Monday at, I think it's going to be 9:30 a.m. Eastern time for the news or 5 p.m. Eastern time for the videos. I hope you enjoy your weekend, which is, for some of you, already in progress. And in the meantime, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Shaggy loves you. And so do I. Be great.